Okay, a very good evening to all of you and welcome to this class for Advanced Accounting. This is Bhavik Chokshi and I will be taking Advanced Accounting for you. So a very quick introduction about myself before we get started. I just cleared my CA in 2008 and subsequently with the rank in my CA final. Along with that I also did my CS and CFA. थोड़ा ज़्यादा पढ़ाई कर लिया. And after that, I took a job in Morgan Stanley in their investment banking franchise. Along with that, we then went to JM Financial, and since then, I have been teaching. This is my first love, and I hope I can do justice to the course that we have. So I've started teaching since early 2000s. While I was in college, I used to teach students from the 3rd standard to the 9th standard. I never touched the 10th and the 12th because of the so-called fear that one has कि भाई बोर्ड एग्जाम है फिर अपने को पता चला कि ये सब टोपी बनाने वाला बात है 10th और 12th के मार्क्स से कुछ खास होता नहीं है but nevertheless so and along with the job we used to teach CFA students and then since the last decade or so I've been teaching full-time CA. So I in my in the CA course I teach inter CA accounts and advanced accounts, and in my finals I teach FR, that is the equivalent of accounting, and SFM along with one elective paper on GFRS. Along with all of this I do enjoy a lot of swimming, so that is something that I do love, and I do ocean swimming, so that is something that I'm passionate about. A lot about myself, I'm pretty sure that you're not interested too much into my background, but nevertheless, we will be doing advanced accounting. This is paper number 5. Please, if you have any queries, please do let me know on the chat box. I'll be happy to address. If you have any queries which you want to ask through voice, if you are aware, you can even raise your hand and I'll be happy to address when the time is right at a logical stop point. So we will be doing paper number 5. This is on advanced accounting. This is the first paper of your group 2. Undoubtedly the most scoring paper out of the 4 papers that are there in group 2. The other 2 papers being auditing and EISSM, where you will be fortunate enough to just scrape through and proceed. Financial management is a scoring paper, but financial management is 60 marks, economics is 40 marks. So financial management along with advanced accounting are 2 papers where you should definitely aim for getting the exemption score. 60 marks is fairly easy. A lot of students in the past have even scored the double exemption, that is more than 80 marks. So this is something which will really help you sail through group 2. So please ensure that you do proper justice to the course and study properly. In terms of the course coverage, do you guys have the book as yet or not yet? No, not yet. Okay, so please, if possible, do collect the books. You will have 3 books. One of the books where we have kept all the concepts, the charts, the volumes, it will look something like this. This is what we call as the Advanced Accounts Velocity book, where we have discussed all the charts, the theory, the concepts, etc. So that is one book. Then you have volume 2 and volume 1, which is question banks. Typically, we have included the questions only for the classwork section, questions and solutions for the homework section. There is one section in your syllabus which is accounting standards, where there is a lot of theory based and case based answers as well, where we have included the questions and solutions both. But otherwise you will have to keep a separate notebook handy for your solution. Most of your concepts would be in this theory book, the Advanced Accounting Velocity book. Okay, so if you don't have the book, I'll just keep the index in front of you so that it's clear. I'll just run you through the course pattern. Okay, I'll run you through the course pattern. If possible, just try to collect your books tomorrow itself so that you have it handy. It's much more easier and much more efficient. Yes, we are in the digital age and everything, the lectures happen online, everything happens online. Apan mast bed pe soye lecture dekh rahe. But it is always helpful to have the hard copy of the books right in front of you. It helps a lot in your marking as well as revision. So please don't act a little more lazier. Please do collect your books as soon as possible. Yes, they are ready, I guess. They are definitely ready. You can have a word. So in terms of advanced accounts, if I look at the institute's study material, we don't need to refer this. Our course covers everything which is there in the institute's material, including the revisionary test papers, MTPs, etc. You don't need to revise this, but nevertheless, if you look at the institute's material, Okay, no problems. So जैसे आपको बोला है वैसे you have 10 main chapters in advanced accounts. I'll run you through the paper pattern first. You can write this down if you want to together. In terms of the paper pattern, you have a 100-mark paper with, so this will comprise of 20 questions, 20 marks के total of 6 questions. 6 questions of 20 marks each. 6 questions of 20 marks each. सर ये तो 120 होता है. यस, मेरा मैथ्स इतना भी खराब नहीं है. यू हैव वन ऑप्शन इफ यू आर अवेयर. क्वेश्चन नंबर 1, लाइक योर स्टैंडर्ड पेपर, goes in as compulsory. In almost every question that has gone, every exam question that has gone by, this has been composed of 5 marks into 4 questions, and largely these questions come from accounting standards section. So this come from the AS section, the accounting standards section of advanced accounts, almost every time. So this is going to be your compulsory question for 20 marks. Apart from that, you have question 2 से लेके question 6. So there are 5 questions out of which you have to attempt any 4. So you have one question, one golden question which you can leave for option, और वो golden question के नाम पे अपन बहुत सारे चीज option में, हाँ ये तो option में छोड़ देंगे. It's just one question, remember, that you can leave for option. So you have any out of the remaining 5, you can attempt any 4. So this is 20 into 4 and hence this is 80 marks. क्या बोलते हैं, टोटल हो गया 100. Okay, so this should be our aim. सर किधर 100 मार्क्स का पेपर पूरा कर दे वही बहुत है. यस, ओके, बट वी शुड टारगेट ऑफ एटलीस्ट बीइंग इन अ पोजीशन टू अटेम्प्ट द एंटायर 100 मार्क पेपर. Above 60 is something, our passing marks we will count as 60 only for advanced accounts. That is your passing marks. Getting less than 60 is not passing in advanced accounts. I'll not be as harsh in something like audit or ICAI SSM, but advanced accounts is something where you have to score more than 60. Okay, so this is your total weightage. Almost your entire paper is either going to be a case based paper or a numerical paper. Sir, what do you mean by case based? Maybe you will be given a small case where an accountant might have done a particular treatment. So for example, we are doing an accounting standard and an accountant has done a particular treatment, and आपके जैसे experts से एक advice पूछा जाएगा that is the treatment done by the accountant correct or not, for which you have to give the reasons for that. So that is a case based of case type question, or a numerical question like what you might have done in your 12th standard or foundation, where you might have to prepare final accounts, etc. So that is a numerical question. Almost your entire paper is either a case based paper or a numerical paper bearing 5 odd marks, which will come for theory, whereby you will be told that what are the circumstances in which an LLP, for example, can be liquidated, or what are the circumstances or what are the liabilities of a designated partner in terms of an LLP. Is there any question, Sakshi? Okay, so this is a theory based section of around 5 marks. Apart from that, almost your entire paper is going to be a practical paper which covers either cases or which covers sums. Any problems till now? अरे ज्यादा भाव नहीं खाने का, हाँ या ना बोलने का. Yes, okay, चलो, great. So that gives you an overview of the paper. In terms of the coverage, Institute has divided this into 3 modules. So when we look at advanced accounts, if you want, please do write this. Advanced accounts, in terms of your overall weightage, there will be accounting standards, and that is, we write this in short in AS. Some of you might have done accounting standards in your paper 1, some of you might not have done, but we will study. I'll give you a brief introduction of what accounting standards are. These are like separate standards. There will be accounting standards, and that will come for around 25 marks. So sometimes they have even come up to 30 marks, but they do come for 25 marks. So that's a fairly deep weightage. सर 25 मार्क्स तो है, that can be the difference between your 400 and 390 if you understand. So it is very very important. Especially the compulsory question will be from accounting standards. So question 1 approximately 20 marks comes, and within question 6 typically either 1 to 2 questions of 5 to 10 marks, sometimes even 30 marks का हो जाता है, question 6 में आ जाता है 5 marks के maybe 2 questions. And the accounting standards of advanced accounts is slightly higher level as compared to the accounting standards in your paper number 1. There are a lot more standards and slightly more advanced standards. Okay, apart from that, something that we have been doing since our childhood days, partnership. Have we done enough of partnership? Have we done admission, retirement, death? ये सब हो गया? Yes. Have we done dissolution of partnership? Okay, dissolution is also done. So dissolution comes again along with amalgamation of partnership forms. So within partnership, there is no admission, no retirement, no death. वो सब हो गया हमारा. We will do dissolution and amalgamation. Amalgamation is something that you would not have done till now, I guess. Have you guys done amalgamation of partnership form? नहीं? Okay, so amalgamation कुछ तो पढ़ाने का रहेगा आपको. So there would be amalgamation of partnership form or dissolution, which will come for around 15 marks. So there will be one big question comprising of around 15 marks. Sometimes you have a question for 10 marks and 5 marks का theory पूछा जाता है from partnership, like when will the partnership firm be liquidated, under which circumstances. If you have studied dissolution, you would be aware probably about Garner versus Murray. Have you heard about these two people? ऐसा केस लॉ सुना है अपन ने, गार्नर वर्सेस मरे? नो, चलो ठीक है, नो प्रॉब्लम. सो nevertheless we'll study, don't worry. So there might be certain circumstances in which partnership firm can be dissolved, so something like that, around 15 marks. Okay, so this is what comprises of module number 1 of your institute's study material. CA institutes module number 1 is accounting standards and partnership. You don't need to refer this, but just as a referencer. Then within module number 2, there are a lot of chapters. So this, in module number 2 of your CA final, there are a lot of chapters which will come for around 40 marks. Roughly 40 marks comes from module number 2, which comprises of some special transactions. I'll just draw a chart. You don't have the index, so I'm just writing everything over here. There will be something called as ESOP, Employee Stock Option Plan. You will see all of this in your index. For example, accounting for employee stock option plan, ESOP. So there will be ESOP, and ESOP typically comes for around 5 marks, sometimes 10 marks, but typically around 5 marks. Second, you have buyback of equity shares. Once you do redemption of preference shares in your paper number 1, this becomes a little more easier. Similar terms like capital redemption reserve, etc. come over here as well. Buyback of equity shares and shares with differential rights. This will be typically anywhere between 10 to 15 marks. Easy question, easy pickings. Then you have amalgamation. This is the most important chapter. This is amalgamation of companies. ऊपर अपन ने देखा था amalgamation of partnership firm. This is amalgamation of companies, will come for around 15 marks on an average. A fairly big question and a scoring question as well. Then there is internal reconstruction. 100 मार्क लेने के लिए बहुत मेहनत करना पड़ेगा. Internal reconstruction, which will be typically between 5 to 10 marks. And lastly, liquidation, which is also slightly format based. Liquidation of companies. Liquidation of companies, which will also be 5 marks, sometimes around 10 marks. So these are broad ranges. Have you guys written this, or you want me to wait? Wait. Done. Wait. Okay. Can we? क्या आपकी इजाजत है? With a fairly magical bottle. Yes. Okay, so this is your weightage of module number 2. These are specific chapters, and then is the last module where you have special accounts. This is module number 3, module 3 of your CA final, which is around 30 marks roughly. So if you go to see loosely, module number 1 is 40 marks, 25 from accounting standards, 15 from partnership, so that's around 40 marks. Module 2 is also around 40 marks. Module 3 is roughly around 30 marks. I mean 110 ho raha hai because of that optional question as well. Okay, within this you have banks, accounting for banks, accounting for non-banking financial corporations. So there will be banks, typically around 5 to 10 marks. Typically 10 marks का question आता है आपको banks के ऊपर. NBFCs, non-banking financial corporations, जिसके पास से आपको बहुत सारे spam calls आते रहते हैं. You want this credit card, you want this loan, you want that loan, अपन काट देते हैं. These are NBFCs, most people, spam callers. So over here, this is around 5 marks roughly. And lastly, you have consolidation. Now this is something which is very important. जितने भी आप V डालो कम है for consolidation, because this is something which sets a base for your final CA, and almost any interview question that you get when you are going into an accounting profile is generally linked to consolidation. So CFS or consolidated financial statements will be anywhere between 15 to around 20 marks. And this is your broad weightage. 10 chapters. Accounting standards is treated as one single chapter, then partnership, then around 5 chapters in your module number 2, and then around 3 chapters in your module number 3. Are we clear with this? Koi shak? Sir, could you tell us in what order we will be going through the portion? Well, most likely we will be doing some accounting standards to start with, then we will be doing module 2. Accounting standards, there are a lot of them. If you go to see as compared to your advanced accounts, there will be a lot of accounting standards. से एक पॉइंट के बाद अपने को नींद आने लगेगा, बराबर है, तो उसके आपको नींद से जगाने के लिए we'll have to do some numerical topics. So we will go to the module 2 where we will do a few topics of module 2, buyback, ESOP, amalgamation, internal record, most likely in that same order. Again going back to the remainder topics of your accounting standards, and then going to your module 3. So we'll mix and match between accounting standards, but typically this is the order in which we go through. Partnership typically we do at the end. Okay, perfect. Chalo. So that takes care of a brief introduction of your advanced accounts. Now we will go into accounting standards. Some of you, I understand, would have done accounting standards. Some of you would be relatively you would be relatively new to the concept of accounting standards. Largely, what is accounting standard, to whom are they applicable, all of that is a part of your paper number 1. Paper number 2 is advanced accounts. Apan सीधा advanced पहुंच गए. So you will do about the applicability of accounting standards, etc. in your paper number 1, but nevertheless I will run you through. First of all, what do you mean by accounting standards, and why do we need accounting standards in the first place? Can anyone tell me in loose language, you don't have to reproduce exact language, what is an accounting standard? What is an accounting standard? I mean, you can just put a small chat note as well. Okay, it will help in disclosure. Okay, so this helps, it will rules set up by our MyBAP, ICAI. Governing the method of accounting. That is exactly right. Very nice. So accounting standards give the rules which need to be followed for companies who are preparing financial statements. As the name goes, accounting standard, you want some standardization in the way accounts are prepared. Sir, why do we need standardization? Let the accounts be prepared in whatever way it happens. How does it matter? Well, standardization is essentially needed because one of the core principles of financial reporting is comparability. So for example, if you have money and you want to invest money in companies, for example, there are two companies. You say कि भाई ठीक है यार आजकल लोग packaged food बहुत खा रहे हैं, let us invest money in a packaged food company. So there is Britannia, there is Parle. Both of these are packaged food companies. You want to invest money in one of them, in which case you look at their financial statements. This is the language of accounts of the companies, their performance. So let us look at the financial statement. So you pick up Britannia, you pick up Parle, and you see that they've written in a different language. Britannia has taken some other method of accounting, cash system. Parle has taken accrual system. How will we compare and come to a decision on which of the two companies is better? Are we getting this? And as a result, in order to ensure that these companies typically speak a uniform language, they present a standardized picture, comes the birth of accounting standards. And that is why accounting standards are to be followed, so that standardization in accounting practices is done. So this is a brief interpretation. Ajay, is accounting standards compulsory? Is it mandatory? What do you guys think? Do you think every entity which prepares a financial statement follows accounting standards? The answer is no. The answer is no. सर हम इंटर सीए तक पहुंच गए, हमने 11th और 12th में भी अच्छे खासे सोल प्रोप्राइटर पार्टनरशिप के अकाउंट्स बनाए. डिड यू गाइस प्रिपेयर एनी ऑफ दोस अकाउंट्स इन लाइन विद accounting standards? Did your 11th, 12th, FIJC, SYJC professors teach you any kind of accounting standards? No. Because accounting standards are not mandatory to individuals. They are not mandatory for partnerships. Well, ये तो छोटे मोटे लोग हैं बेचारे, इनको किधर परेशान करने का ये सब सिखा के. And as a result, the government is a little liberal. They would say, ठीक है यार, these are small entities. Let us not really bother them with preparing what you call as accounting standards. So they are not mandatory for individuals, HUFs, partnerships. If they want to prepare, well, they can. However, they are not mandatory. However, for companies, joint stock companies, to which the Companies Act of 2013, companies to which the Companies Act of 2013 applies, has mandatorily required the application of accounting standards. And now we are graduating from our accounting understanding to from 11th, 12th foundation, where we have been doing individuals, partnerships, this and that, to we go to company accounts. Inter C, a lot of your understanding is company accounts. Final C, entirely is company accounts. There is only and only company accounts. There is no partnership, no individual, nothing. So you are going into the company accounts ambit, where the institute now thinks it is the right time to introduce accounting standards to you. Accounting standards are mandatory for companies. They're not mandatory for partnership firms or other non-corporate entities, but for companies largely they are mandatory. There are certain exceptions, but largely they are mandatory. Are we clear with this? Yes? Acha. Okay. Just for your knowledge, this is additional information. None of this is relevant from your inter-CS syllabus, but just for your overall understanding. So when you go for an articleship interview, you should be aware of what is happening around you. There is something called as accounting standards, AS, which you will study in your paper 1 and your paper 5 in your inter-CA, intermediate. There is also something called as IND AS, the Indian Accounting Standards, IND AS. Have you heard about this? Anyone? क्या बात है? So this is your IND AS, that is right. IND AS is going to be covered in your final CA. Now, like in India, earlier we had service tax, and service tax got replaced by GST. Accounting standards have not been fully replaced. Earlier you had accounting standards. From 2016-17 onwards, when you were probably preparing for your board exams, from around 16-17 onwards, we have moved slowly towards IND AS. IND AS is based on what you call as IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, which are issued by a UK based company or UK based body. So the bigger companies as of today, the listed companies which are having a net worth of more than 250 crores, companies which are listed on the Bombay and the National Stock Exchange, for example, have to mandatorily follow IND AS. So who is following? Yes, हमको फालतू में पढ़ाया जा रहा है? नहीं, हमको फालतू में नहीं पढ़ाया जा रहा है. Every entity which is not listed, every entity which does not have a net worth of 250 crores and above, is still following accounting standards, and hence institute teaches you all the accounting standards in your inter CA, all the Ind AS in your final CA. Are we clear with this? Yes. अच्छा, आपको क्या लग रहा है? Which of the two would be the majority clients? Will it be companies following AS or companies following Ind AS? AS by a huge margin. There are barely 8 to 10,000 companies in India which are listed, and there are more than 50 crore unlisted corporate and non-corporate entities. So over here, AS far surpasses Ind AS in today's world. However, in a few years, probably half a decade or slowly institute will move towards Ind AS, but till that time अपन तो final CA clear करके CA बन चुके रहेंगे, बराबर. What is gap? What is gap? Gap is generally accepted accounting practices. This is just a layman's term which is used. Gap. It's a good question. Generally accepted accounting practices or generally accepted accounting principles, which is a layman's term for accounting standards. Like when we look at mergers, acquisitions, amalgamation, absorption, हर एक का थोड़ा अलग-अलग meaning होता है, but at the end of the day they are trying to say the same thing. So gap is generally accepted accounting practices, which generally mean the accounting standards. Usually the Indian GAAP or IGAP is called as the accounting standards, whereas Ind AS or IFRS is called as the international accounting standards, though GAAP is a generally accepted accounting practices. Like US GAAP is the US generally accepted accounting practices. Indian GAAP is the Indian generally accepted accounting practices. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. Anything else? Anything else? No? Okay, chalo. So now we will start with understanding and doing accounting standard 26. This is on intangible assets. So AS 26, this is an important standard. We will rate this into the tier 1 category in terms of its importance. Tier 1 category, it's a very important standard. A lot of weightage in the past exams have come for intangible assets. So we'll start with AS 26. How do you account for intangible assets? Acha, what do you mean by intangible assets? Can you give me some examples of intangible assets? Goodwill, okay. Do we also write, sir? See, most of the items will be printed and given to you. If you still want to write, if you are the type of the person जैसे journalist होता है जो भी बोला फटाफट लिखना, you can write it. Having said that, most of the items will be given. So when you have this hard copy, you don't have to specifically write this. If you go to see most of these, I mean, I will write and explain. I will not really read everything which is over here. I will write and explain. If you want to write, you can. But having said that, if there is something which has to be specifically added, I will tell you. But otherwise, आप नहीं भी लिखो तो चलेगा. Okay. So certain examples: goodwill, patent, trademark, copyright. Very nice. So we know what intangible assets are. Is machinery an intangible asset? Is land an intangible asset? No. So what is the core feature of an intangible asset? All of these what you have mentioned are correct, patents, copyright, trademark, etc. But what is the fundamental feature which defines an intangible asset? Something which cannot be, you cannot touch, feel, see. Yes, okay. So ये अपना student language में सबसे best definition है, something that you can't touch, feel, see. In technical words, this is called as something which lacks physical substance. So if there is an asset which actually lacks physical substance, something that you cannot physically feel or touch, that is what you call as an intangible asset. So something like a patent comes in the form of a license. Now one can always say कि यार ये paper अपन touch कर सकते हैं, or we get a software in a pen drive, CD we can touch, but that CD or pen drive is a very negligible, it's that hardware on which that software sits is a very negligible component of the entire value of the asset. Largely the asset is intangible in nature, and as a result you can't touch, feel, see. So basically, as per our understanding, something that you cannot touch, feel and see is an intangible asset. Is that correct? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. So let me ask you a question. Can you touch, feel and see your bank, your cash, hard cash? Can you touch, feel? Yes, you can. But your bank balance, the money that you own in your bank, can you touch, feel and see? No. Which means as per your understanding, is a bank balance also an intangible asset to be accounted for as per AS 26? The money which is there in your bank account, You can't touch, feel and see. No. Or let us say something like a prepaid expense, if you are aware. Sir, but we can withdraw. Chalo. I'm just coming to a basic point. Prepaid expenses. Let us say you prepay lease rent or you prepay advertisement expense. Can you touch, feel and see that? Can you touch, feel, see that? No. Which means, can a prepaid expense also be classified as an intangible asset and accounted for as per AS 26? The answer is no. So this is one of those times कि हमको पता है कि सर आंसर नो है बट क्यों है पता नहीं चल रहा है. That is because the definition of intangible asset does not just say that an intangible asset is something that you cannot touch, feel and see. Yes, that is one of the essential ingredients of an item being intangible. So if something is intangible, there are three main ingredients for it to be intangible. This is for your overall understanding. A chart for this is already there in your notes. Something which lacks physical substance, as you have correctly pointed out, and rightly so. However, that is not the only criteria, because something like a prepaid expense also does not have physical substance. Something like a bank balance also does not have a physical substance. Then what else? Well, there is an additional criteria whereby it is told that this asset has to be something which is non-monetary in nature. Monetary, non-monetary, you will study in a separate accounting standard called as AS 11. But before that, monetary and non-monetary loosely means, monetary means the value that an asset has is fixed, is determinable in money value terms. For example, if you have 33,333 in your bank balance, you will get 33,333, not a penny more, not a penny less. So the value is fixed, determinable in money terms. That is when you call it as monetary. Debtor. If you have sold goods on credit and you are supposed to receive 22,222, the debtor is going to write a check and give you 22,222. The money is fixed or determinable in money terms. The value of the asset that you see in the balance sheet is contractually a fixed or a determinable value in money terms. However, if the land appearing in your balance sheet, land, I know it's not an intangible asset, it's tangible, but land which is appearing in your balance sheet, you must have purchased land, let us say 50 years back. Your grandparents must have purchased land 50 years back for 1,000 rupees. You are showing the land at cost in your balance sheet. Does the value of land appearing in your balance sheet reflect the money value that you will get if you were to realize the land? Is it a contractually fixed or determinable value that you are going to get? No. So what do you guys think? Is land a monetary asset? That is an asset which can be converted into a fixed or a determinable amount of money, clearly fixed or determinable amount of money, or it is a non-monetary asset? Non-monetary. You will study this at a lot of length in AS 11 foreign exchange, but nevertheless, are we getting a brief sense? Yes, acha. What do you guys think about the bank balance? Is the bank balance monetary in nature or non-monetary in nature? Monetary, and that is why it moves out of the definition of intangible assets as per AS 26. Ideally, bank balance is lacking physical substance. It does not have a physical substance. However, because it is monetary in nature, it is not covered by AS 26. AS 26 says, okay, the asset should lack physical substance, but it should also be non-monetary in nature. So land is non-monetary, but then it has physical substance. So land cannot be covered under AS 26 because it has physical substance, though it is non-monetary in nature. समझ में आ रहा है कुछ अपने को? Are yes or no? Yes? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Apart from that, there is a third criteria which is a slightly more difficult criteria to understand. That is, the asset should be identifiable, which means you should be able to put a finger on this separately and say that this is an identifiable asset, and this is what makes intangible assets inherently more complex as compared to every other category of assets. So when we look at an asset which is to be identifiable, we mean to say that this is something which we can either separate out and sell it separately if we want to, or something which gives us a license or a right to operate. I'll again repeat. What is an identifiable asset? An identifiable asset is something which is capable of being separated out and sold separately. Capable of being separated out and sold separately if you desire, or something which gives the holder of that asset a license or a right to operate. सर कितनी बार बोलो गूगली जा रहे, सर हमारे सर के ऊपर से जा रहा है, सब कुछ समझ में आ रहा है अपने को? गॉट इट, क्या बात है, जब बात, very nice. So what do you mean by this and why is this criteria there? Well, if an asset is identifiable, it means that it is either separable, which means something like patents. So let us say you have Crocin. अभी तो डोलो 650 सब जगह चल रहा है, but there was once upon a time where Crocin was a market leader in what you now call as paracetamol. अभी तो सबको ये सब पता है, right? So Crocin was manufactured by a company called as Elder Pharma. Now Elder Pharma manufactures close to 2000 different drugs, or drugs as in medicines. Crocin is one of them. It is not the only medicine, it is just one of them. So if Elder Pharma says that I want to transfer the patent to manufacture Crocin to some other pharmaceutical company, let us say Ranbaxy or Sun Pharma, can it sell only the patent to manufacture Crocin? Is it possible? Can it sell it? What do you guys think? Yes, it can. It can. So can you, now whether it wants to sell or not is immaterial, but is it capable of selling only that patent to someone else? The answer is yes. Yes, it is capable. It is capable of identifying that one asset out of its entire business and selling it separately if it wants to. This is what you mean by separable. Okay, another general knowledge question. In India, when you look at passenger cars, which is the company whose maximum passenger cars you see on the road? Passenger cars. Maruti, exactly. Maruti Suzuki is the company which has close to 40% market share in the Indian passenger car market. 40% market share in the Indian passenger car market. Is that valuable? Do you think having a market share is a valuable asset for you? Yes, it is undoubtedly valuable. Google has close to a 90% market share in the search engine market, for example. Now, this is a very valuable asset. Now, Hyundai wants to come and only acquire the 40% market share of Maruti. It does not want the factory, it does not want anything else, it just wants to acquire the 40% market share of Maruti. Do you think that is actually possible? Is it possible to just acquire the market share without acquiring the entire business of Maruti? Yes or no? No. However, if Hyundai were to take over 100% of Maruti, it were to acquire Maruti Suzuki Limited, then would it by implication also get the market share of Maruti? Yes. So that is what we are trying to say. For something to be identifiable, it should be capable of being separately sold without selling off your entire business. So is market share something which is an identifiable asset? Is market share an identifiable asset? Excellent. No, it is not. Why? Because you are not capable of selling just the market share separately. However, is patent a separately identifiable asset? Yes. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. Similar is the case with copyright. For example, we must have seen the Game of Thrones series, or if not, we must have read or heard about it for sure. Sir, क्या सीन, हमने तो दो तीन तीन बार देख के रखे, हम पढ़ाई बाद में करते, ये सब पहले हम इसमें चैंप है. So when we look at the Game of Thrones series, किसने लिखा है Game of Thrones? There is someone called as George R.R. Martin, if you are aware. Now, George R.R. Martin would have written various books. Game of Thrones series is one of them. So, if I were George R.R. Martin and if I were to prepare my balance sheet, am I capable of transferring the copyrights for just a Game of Thrones series to HBO and not transferring the other copyrights? Am I capable of doing that? Well, yes. And as a result, these copyrights that I have are separately identifiable because they're capable of being separately transferred. Are we getting this? Yes? Okay. So, sir, what about the assets that you are not capable of separately transferring? In general, these are internally generated assets which are not capable of being transferred. You don't record them separately as intangible assets. You don't record them separately. For example, the self-generated goodwill. If you look at a company like Google, for example, Google would recognize all of its assets in the balance sheet. But do you think Google can recognize its own goodwill? Do you think Google has goodwill? Do you think Google has goodwill? Yes. But do you think that goodwill can be recognized in the balance sheet of Google itself? No. Because it lacks the identifiability criteria. Well, if someone were to acquire Google as a whole, then the goodwill of Google will be transferred. However, you just can't only acquire the goodwill of Google. And hence, goodwill, though intangible, is not an identifiable asset. Oh. Goodwill, though intangible, is not an identifiable asset. So, sir, can goodwill be recognized in the balance sheet? Well, not under AS 26. There will be a separate accounting standard that you will study called as AS 14, amalgamation of companies. So, when you acquire a company, as a part of that acquisition, you might be paying some goodwill. For example, of a decade or so back, if you are aware, Tata Motors acquired Jaguar and Land Rover, JLR. Tata Motors acquired JLR, or fairly recently, Walmart acquired Flipkart. In which case, they must have paid certain goodwill. But this is a business combination. This is an amalgamation which was happening, through which goodwill can be recorded. However, AS 26 does not count those assets. AS 26 says कि भाई हम तो वो assets देख रहे हैं जो intangible है, जो identifiable है. There are various accounting standards. Goodwill, though an intangible asset, will never be accounted for as per AS 26. It could be possibly accounted for under some other accounting standard of business combination. समझ में आ रहा है अपने को? Clear? Any problems? You think it's going fast, slow? Please do let me know. जनरली आप मेरे सामने बैठे रहते हो तो आपको शक्ल देख के आराम से समझ में आ जाता है कि आपके ऊपर से जा रहा है या फिर आपको नींद आ रहा है. अभी कि आपका शक्ल दिख रहा नहीं है. Perfect. Okay. So for something to be identifiable, it has to be either separable. So it has to be capable of being separated. However, sometimes what happens is there are certain assets which you just cannot separate. I'll just give you an example. अभी तो वैसा नहीं है, अभी laws have changed. However, there was something called as telecom license. अपन ने वो 2G घोटाला, स्पेक्ट्रम घोटाला ये सब सुना था? सुना है अपन ने? Yes? Okay. So earlier what happened was telecom license was a very you think telecom license is, what is telecom license? Basically, the government of India has airwaves. Spectrum बोलते हैं इसको अपन, frequency, airwaves. Now that airwaves is national asset. National asset. So if Airtel wants to use a particular frequency, if Jio wants to use a particular frequency, it has to pay the government of India for getting the right to use on a particular frequency. Government does not give this free of cost, and hence you have to pay certain license fees. Are we getting a brief understanding? अपन यहाँ पे टेलीकॉम में PhD करने को नहीं है. So we are getting a brief understanding. So that spectrum fees that you pay, which will give us a license. So on a particular frequency, Airtel can operate for 10 years and no one can dispute it. So is that something which has physical substance? Do airwaves have physical substance? No, it does not have physical substance. For the time being, we will not do a lot of detailing on what is non-monetary. For the time being, it is non-monetary. The value of that license can keep on changing. I might have paid 5,000 crores, the value might be 15,000 now, it might become 500 crores also. So the value can keep on changing. The value is not necessarily the same, so it is non-monetary. However, is Airtel allowed to transfer the telecom license to someone else? The government of India has banned it. It says कि नहीं भैया ये तो एकदम national asset है. कल उठ के if some company of an enemy country, we don't want to name such countries, but let us say company of an enemy country comes and acquires you, you would have compromised a national asset. एक particular frequency of airwaves कोई और use कर पाएगा, हमारा enemy use कर पाएगा. So this is something of national importance. You cannot transfer it. And Airtel is fine. It says okay, I want to use it for my own use. I don't want to transfer it to anyone. That is fine. So it is very normal for government to put in restrictions that you cannot transfer certain assets. For example, telecom license, अभी वो rules थोड़े dilute हो गए, but nevertheless for an academic understanding. So can we say that this telecom license, which appears to be intangible, can we say it is separable? Can you separate out and sell the telecom license if you want to? Yes or no? Well, no, you can't. Which means, does a telecom license meet the identifiability criteria? Ideally, no. We would say, nahin yaar, it does not meet the identifiability criteria because it cannot be separated, and hence the law has said, well, something is identifiable if it is either separable or there is a license or a right which is granted under a contract or under a law. Has the government granted a license or a right under a law? Yes or no? Yes, which means, okay, for sure this telecom license is not separable. However, does it fall within this license or right? Yes, which means can telecom license be recorded as an intangible asset in the books of Airtel? Yes, it can be, because it is identifiable, it is non-monetary in nature and it lacks physical substance as well. Is everyone clear with this? थोड़ा थोड़ा समझ में आ रहा है अपने को? थोड़ा deep है अपने को, slowly we will absorb everything, but थोड़ा थोड़ा समझ में आ रहा है. Okay, चलो. So license or right? Okay, did anyone give Maruti Suzuki the license or the right to have a 40% market share? Did Maruti Suzuki have a license or a right? No. It earned that market share probably because of the type of products it launches, because of, let us say, understanding of the Indian market, blah blah blah, whatever it is. But there was no license granted to Maruti Suzuki, and Maruti Suzuki cannot just separate the market share, and as a result, is market share identifiable? No, it's not identifiable. It's not even separable. It does not even result in a license or a contractual right. Are we clear with this? Yes, so maybe copyright, patent वगैरह आपको पता है. Trademark is like that. Twitter का जो चिड़िया है, the चिड़िया of Twitter is the trademark of Twitter, for example. That is a mark that only Twitter can use. No one can replicate it without the permission of Twitter. Copyright is something where जो अपन आए दिन वायोलेट करते हैं, अपन आए दिन copyright वायोलेट करते हैं. Where let us say there is a book. Somewhere in the book it is written that you cannot really take a copy or you cannot use it, reproduce it without the author's consent. अपन बोलते हैं यार हम तो Xerox मारेंगे, होने दो author को जो होता है वो बराबर है. So this is copyright where you cannot reproduce without the author's consent. Patent is something on the manufacturing process. So for example, if I have developed a particular manufacturing process, that manufacturing process cannot be copied. अभी आजकल अपन ने, if you track automotive news, अपन ने देखा रहेगा BMW has very recently introduced a car which changes colors. देखा है अपन ने, वो color changing गाड़ी है, chameleon जैसा गाड़ी बन गया. So that is a technology or that is a process that they have used, which others cannot copy. I mean, that is a patent, for example. That is a patent. So patent is on a manufacturing process. Copyright is on literary or artistic works. Trademark is basically symbols, etc. But generally अभी अपने को goodwill वगैरह license है. I mean, अपना Wikipedia इधर usually end हो जाता है. Is there any other intangible assets that you are aware of? Sannata. Software, something as basic as that. Yes. So software is definitely an intangible asset. It will be covered under AS26 as well. Okay, there are a lot of other things like development assets. आजकल जो that AstraZeneca vaccine, the COVID Shield vaccine, or the Bharat Biotech Covaxin, for example, do you guys think that these are intangible assets for the companies who have developed it? Don't you think they are intangible assets? So for someone like AstraZeneca who has developed the COVID Shield vaccine, does it? Yes, it is also an intangible asset. There can be a wide variety of intangible assets, or just before we proceed, other assets like franchisee rights, for example, can they also be intangible assets? Yes, acha, franchisee. Okay, question mark. Okay, what is a franchisee? अपन ने Domino's, do we eat pizzas as Domino's? खाया है अपन ने? बिल किसके नाम पे आता है? Who gives you the bill for Domino's pizza? सर किसको पड़ा है? अपने को तो मस्त पिज्जा खाने में इंटरेस्ट है. Jubilant Foodworks, that is right. It comes in the name of Jubilant Foodworks. थोड़े यहाँ पे auditor लोग हैं तो लोगों ने देखा है. It comes in the name of Jubilant Foodworks. So what is Jubilant Foodworks? It is a master franchisee of Domino's. So Domino's is a US company. It does not directly operate in India. Jubilant Foodworks is an Indian company which has taken the master franchisee. It says, okay, I will operate stores in the name of Domino's, use the recipe of Domino's, ingredients, etc. that Domino's suggests, and I will sell. For that, I will pay an X amount to Domino's. So Domino's has said, okay, I have seen that you are a person with good integrity. I'm fine if you use my name. I don't want someone to spoil my name. Okay, I trust you. You pay me an X amount as franchise fees, and I will grant you that franchise. So in the books of Jubilant Foodworks, this is an intangible asset, the franchise right. This franchise right, let us say Domino's does not allow you to transfer that to anyone else. Domino's says कि भाई मेरा नाम कोई भी एरे गेरे के पास चले गया तो I don't want that. However, is it still an intangible asset? Can you still recognize the intangible asset in your books? What do you guys think? Yes. Why? Among other things, is it identifiable? Is it identifiable? Yes. How is it identifiable? It is not separable. Then how is it identifiable? Well, because a license or a right is given. That is exactly right. Okay, so that I think you have a fair enough understanding, which makes me go to the next level, where you will probably study something which you have been taught in your foundation 11th or 12th, which was fundamentally, which is fundamentally not allowed in companies. You just can't do that. You must have studied revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, and have you also studied what you call as deferred? Vaccine part again, yes, I will do that. Just wait, we will have a separate section on research and development, and in the research and development we will do that vaccine part in a lot of detail. So trust me, you will understand. वहाँ पे थोड़ा complexity आता है, but we will do that. Okay. So have you heard about deferred revenue expenses? Have you heard about deferred revenue expenses? Yes. So something like you must have been taught that a company like an Oppo or Vivo, for example, has done a huge advertising campaign and it expects the benefits to be received due to that advertising campaign over a period of 5 years. Barabar, major advertisement. Okay. So what do you do with such expenses? Do you record it in the P&L of the year when the advertisement is aired, or do you record it in the P&L over the 5-year period? Option A, record it in the year when the advertisement is displayed. Option B, record it over the 5 years. Option B, that is where you go wrong. Okay, yes, this is what you have been taught in your 11th, in your 12th, as well as in your foundation, but that is where you did not study accounting standards. AS 26 was not applicable. AS 26 does not permit such a recognition. It says, okay, we have used a lot of, you have done a lot of advertisement, all the ads are displayed in the current year, we have spent 500 crores on advertisement. At the end of the year, we now expect that because we have done so much advertisement, अपन देखे ना यार, इधर जिधर देखे ओप्पो वीवो सब जगह वही दिख रहा था. There was a point, सब जगह ओप्पो वीवो. So let us say we have done that advertisement. That advertisement is already done. Going forward, can you separate out and sell that advertisement alone to someone else? Is it possible? No. Does that advertisement give you any license? Yes, you may possibly get future benefits, but the law does not say if it is identifiable if it gives future benefits. No, it says there has to be a license. You can sue someone if a particular right is breached. Does it give you a license? No. And as a result, these advertisement expenses, which basically lack physical substance and hence no other accounting standard will apply, they will not be covered under the ambit of intangible assets because they are not identifiable. So all that you have studied about deferred revenue expenses, big preliminary expenses incurred at the start, or a big advertisement campaign done, nothing can be capitalized because they do not meet the identifiability criteria. Sir, but हमने तो ये पढ़ा है, बराबर है, आपने पढ़ा रहेगा. But वो तो आपने, just to give you perspective, आपने वो भी पढ़ा रहेगा that if you are selling an asset, let us say the asset has, अरे क्या हो गया यार, just a second. Okay, so we were saying that if an asset, where was I? Okay, मैं भूल चुका हूँ. We were trying to discuss about deferred revenue expenses and I was trying to give you some example. I think I've lost track, but nevertheless, so when we look at a deferred revenue expense is something which can be which is possible to give future economic benefits, and hence we say, chalo, we will spread it over 5 years as per what you call as a matching concept. However, one of the fundamental accounting assumptions is accrual. When does the expense accrue? Accrual teaches you that you recognize expenses as and when it is incurred, recognize incomes as and when they are earned. So there is a conflict between accrual and matching concept. Accrual says कि भाई तुमने advertisement display कर दिया, that means expense has accrued. अभी future benefit आवे ना आवे वो secondary है. Advertisement has been displayed. Expenditure, it is revenue in nature. So we were earlier allowed to defer these revenue expenses. The standard says, well, if you are deferring them, that means in the balance sheet you are showing an asset. And if you are showing an asset which lacks physical substance, it has to be an intangible asset, whereas this item does not meet the identifiability criteria within an intangible asset. And hence, as per AS 26 in accounting standards, as well as per Ind AS 38 that you will study in final CA, deferred revenue expenses cannot be recognized in the balance sheet unless some other specific accounting standard permits. This may appear to be a little weird to you. However, the principles of revenue, capital, deferred revenue were generic in nature. This is now you are studying a specific law. I remember what I was trying to say. Let us say there is an asset whose original cost was 100. Over the years, depreciation was 40 and the written down value of the asset was 60 rupees. Let us say the selling price of this asset is 110, which means there is a gain on sale of 50 rupees. Barabar ke nahi? Do we agree to this? Yes, acha. Out of this 50 rupees, can we say that the gain of 110 minus 100, that is 10 rupees, which is the gain over and above the original cost? I'm not sure whether you have studied this in foundation or not. This gain which is over and above the original cost, is it capital in nature or is it revenue in nature? You have studied this? Okay. Whereas the difference between 100 and 60, this is 40. This is like reversal of depreciation, and depreciation has gone in the profit and loss account. So we are saying, okay, we thought 100 ka cheez less okay, 60 pe aa jayega. We could actually realize 110. So can we say that this 40 rupees is more like a reversal of depreciation, and depreciation was a revenue item? This 40, is it revenue in nature or is it capital in nature? Revenue. Perfect. Whereas this 10 rupees, is it revenue in nature or is it capital in nature? Please stop me if you have not studied this. Studied, not studied? Studied, not studied? Studied. Okay, so this is capital in nature. Achha, however, when we have prepared asset accounts, when we have passed entries, our journal entries have always been bank account debit 110 to asset, let us say 60, and then directly the balancing figure of 50, this goes to as gain on sale, and this gain on sale goes to the profit and loss account. Ideally, if what you had been taught as per the strictest accounting terms, ideally 40 should have gone into the profit and loss account and balance 10 should have gone to capital reserve, no? Balance 10 should have gone to capital reserve, yes or no? It is capital in nature. However, if you take this balance 10 into capital reserve, in actual terms what will happen is कि भैया वो 10 रुपया capital reserve में permanently पड़ा जाएगा, because dividend cannot be distributed out of capital reserves. Dividend can be distributed only out of profit and loss balances, general reserve, etc. So a much more practical approach was taken by AS10, and AS10 has said कि भैया छोड़ दो revenue or capital in nature, forget that. The moment there is a gain or sale, take on the asset, take it entirely to the P&L. Let it be above cost, let it be below cost. So yes, there might be certain principles that you must have studied in your 11th or 12th which might be shaken now. It is not that you were taught wrong over here or you are being taught wrong right now. This is something which a standard tells you, and there is a reason for that. The reason for AS10 was, well, if you take such items to capital reserve, it will block distributable profit. Shareholders would say कि भाई हमको तो at the end of the day dividend चाहिए. अगर land खरीदा बेचा फायदे में, capital reserve के अंदर पैसा चला जाएगा, we will not get dividend. Standard acknowledges, standard says हाँ वो बात तो तुम्हारा सही है, even if it is capital in nature, let it go to the profit and loss account. In a similar way, deferred revenue expenditure. Ideally, one can say, okay, this is an expenditure which we have incurred and this will give me benefit over 5 years, this will give me benefit over 6 years, 8 years, but at the end of the day, it does not result in an asset. It results in an expenditure, and expenditure is something that has to go to the P&L account. You might argue and say you will get benefit over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but accrual क्या बोलता है? Accrual tells you that the moment ads have been displayed, the posters have been displayed. Now at the end of the year, posters have come down. For example, एक साल अपने सब जगह पोस्टर अपने डाले, रणबीर कपूर या जो भी दीपिका पादुकोण जो भी है उसके ब्रांड एम्बेसडर्स अपने सब जगह पोस्टर डाले, पोस्टर निकाल दिए. दैट मींस द एक्सपेंडिचर हैज बीन इनकर्ड. यस, पीपल विल हैव रिकॉल वैल्यू. दे विल से हाँ यार हमने देखा था दीपिका ओप्पो यूज कर रही है, लेट अस बाय दैट फोन. पीपल माइट हैव रिकॉल वैल्यू. हाउएवर द एड्स हैव बीन डिस्प्लेड, so there is no reason that you should spread over that expenditure over 3 or 4 or 5 years. In any case, you can't show it as an intangible asset because only this advertisement expenditure is not capable of being separated and sold, and this advertisement expenditure does not give you a license or a right. It might give you benefits, but it does not give you a license through which you can sue anyone. And as a result, these items will be expensed as and when they are incurred, and there is nothing called as a deferred revenue expenditure. Please let me know if you have any doubts. Please, please, please. Are you guys sure? Sure? Okay, chalo, great. Thank you very much. So, this is a section which we have studied. Right now, if you don't have the hard copy, I'll just read it to you for your benefit. Otherwise, if you have the hard copy, you can definitely go through it. Intangibles. So, for something to be called as an intangible, you can focus on the screen. It has to be one, identifiable. Second, it has to be non-monetary. Third, it has to lack physical substance. When is it identifiable? It is capable of being sold separately. Capable of being sold separately, or it arises due to a license or a contractual or legal right, as the case may be. That is when it is identifiable. When is it not non-monetary? That is, it cannot be converted into a fixed or a determinable amount of money. Like a debtor, creditor, loan is a fixed or a determinable amount of money, whereas a patent, copyright, trademark, etc. is not necessarily a fixed or a determinable amount of money. And lastly, you cannot touch, feel or see. If these criteria are fulfilled, then we can say that, well, a particular asset is an eligible intangible asset as per AS 26. Okay. A key point over here is the deferred revenue expenditure understanding. Example, big advertisement campaigns. Expenditures incurred on big advertisement campaigns should be recorded, emphasis added, in the profit and loss account as an expense as and when the advertisement is displayed. A classic manifestation of the accrual system of accounting. As and when ads are displayed, that is, recognize expense as and when they are incurred, recognize incomes as and when they are earned. We cannot show it as an intangible asset. Sir, why? This is because the advertisement expenditures do not meet the identifiability criteria. Like patents, copyrights, trademarks, everything, franchise rights, telecom license, they meet the identifiability criteria. That is, they cannot be separately sold, or there is no license given. Yes, there may be benefits that you might expecting, but that is not out of a license. For someone who has to take the benefit of that advertisement incurred, you will probably have to acquire the entire company of Oppo, and not, you can't just acquire. I mean, if you acquire Oppo Limited entirely, obviously the benefit of that advertisement will flow to you. But like market share, you can't just acquire the advertisement, which has already been done. This is irrespective of the fact that advertisement gives future economic benefits or not. Okay, perfect. So this clarifies one point. So today's class will largely focus on theory. Tomorrow's class will do the numericals. So please have some patience. I'll stop at an appropriate time for a breather as well. Okay. If you find it to be very heavy, please do let me know. Please be open enough. There's nothing wrong in that. I'm not the type of person who is going to shut you down for that. So let me know if you have any problems, if you feel things are getting out of hand, or if you need something to be repeated. Okay, second is the recognition of intangible assets. चलो ठीक है, हमने मान लिया, we figured out a particular item is an intangible asset. Can you recognize that intangible asset in the books of accounts? Can you recognize it in your books of accounts? Well, you can recognize it if it meets the criteria of intangibles. But merely because it meets the criteria of intangibles, can you always recognize it? Well, it should also give future economic benefits. Like patents give us future economic benefits. Copyrights can give us future economic benefits. Franchisee for Jubilant Foodworks, for example, is capable of giving future economic benefits. So that is an essential feature of an asset. It should be capable of giving future economic benefits. And lastly, and most importantly, if I want to recognize an intangible asset, it has to meet, recognize in the balance sheet, recognition in the balance sheet. So for the recognition to happen, it should meet the criteria of intangibles जो अपन ने ऊपर discuss किया, identifiable, non-monetary, etc. But over and above that, it should be capable of giving a future economic benefit. It should be something which is controlled by the entity and capable of giving a future economic benefit. Controlled by the entity and capable of giving a future economic benefit. Acha, maybe this is something which you might have studied, but you may or may not remember. You remember the definition of asset? Once upon a time, along with the golden rules of accounts, अपने को asset का definition पढ़ाया गया रहेगा. What is an asset? An asset is a resource which is controlled by an entity, which is capable of generating a future economic benefit. Now, this can be a tangible asset, intangible asset, any kind of asset, investment कुछ भी हो सकता है. But it is a resource controlled by the entity. कुछ जाना पहचाना लग रहा है अपने को? An asset is a resource which is controlled by the entity, which is capable of giving a future economic benefit. So that is an asset. So basically we are trying to say कि भाई ठीक है intangible है but asset तो होना चाहिए ना यार. It should be capable of giving future economic benefit and it should be something that you are controlling. किसी और का asset नहीं, वो आपका asset है यार. It is something that you are controlling. Okay, so it should be something which is controlled by the entity and it is something which is capable of giving a future economic benefit. Sir, give us some example on control. Give us some example on future economic benefits. Let us say there is a pharmaceutical company which is doing research, and we are going to do research and development in some time, but it is doing research on AIDS, HIV AIDS. At least till very recently, if you are aware, the cure for HIV AIDS has not been found. HIV AIDS has not been found, yes. So let us say there are big pharmaceutical companies like Merck Labs, for example. They have been doing research on this for the past 2 decades, 20 years, and they've still not been able to find a solution to AIDS, a cure for AIDS. So when they're doing research, they're spending a lot of money, right, on trying various molecules, various medicine combinations. They're doing various tests. This money that they're spending, is this money going to give them future economic benefits? Is this money going to give them future economic benefits? Well, it will if they are able to find the cure for AIDS. But merely because you do research for AIDS, do you think that means guarantee you are going to find a cure for AIDS? No, it is not certain. And this is where you are in a dilemma. Yaar sir, hum kharcha to kar rahe. If we were to manage the cure for AIDS, we will get a patent, and this patent, if we want, we can separate it out and sell it separately also. But yaar, am I going to get the future economic benefit? Do you think it is certain? Do you think it is certain? No. Yaar, research to bahut log kar rahe. Hundreds and thousands of companies across the world are trying to do a research to find a cure for AIDS. They have not been successful largely. Which effectively means that you might be spending money. However, can you capitalize it and show it as a research asset? No. Because one of the features of an asset, including an intangible asset, is it that money spent should be capable of giving you some future economic benefit, which research is not sure. If you are unable to find a cure, well, you will not get any benefit for the expenditure. Then you cannot show it as an asset on the balance sheet date. यार हमको पता नहीं है, we don't have a time machine कि भाई फ्यूचर में हम फाइंड कर पाएंगे नहीं क्योर. सो टिल द टाइम वी आर नॉट सर्टन, वी विल हैव टू शो इट एज एन एक्सपेंस. डू वी अंडरस्टैंड इट? Do we understand the concept of future economic benefit on why it is needed to be shown as an asset? Otherwise क्या होएगा? You will keep on capitalizing it. Capitalizing का मतलब क्या होता है? You will not show it in the profit and loss account. पहले साल में 100 करोड़ का खर्चा, फिर 200 करोड़ का खर्चा, 300, 400, 500, 600. You will spend thousands of crores and you will not show it in the expense in the P&L. Shareholders are happy कि अरे कंपनी का खर्चा ही नहीं है. Whatever money it is spending, it is showing as research asset account debit to bank, and that research asset is coming in the balance sheet. Typically, for a layman, when an asset is shown in the balance sheet, he or she tends to believe that, okay, this is an asset which is capable of giving me some benefits. That is why it is shown as an asset. Kal utke, if I don't find the cure, that entire 2000 crore worth of research asset will have to be expensed to the profit and loss account. Conservatism and prudence says ऐसा करने का ही क्यों? Prudence and conservative accounting says that if you are not sure of getting a future economic benefits, don't take it to the balance sheet. खर्चा किया, take it to the profit and loss account. Does this make accounting sense? Yes. So till that time you are not sure, and we will study that once. When are we sure? वो development R&D का जो development है अपन देखेंगे. But till the time we are clueless, we are in the research phase, and expenses incurred in the research phase are not certain to give any future economic benefit, and hence that expenditure goes in the profit and loss account. Does this make sense? Are yes or no? Yes. Acha. An asset should be controlled by the entity. What do you mean by the definition of control? Control means you can hold someone or something to you. For example, can you control, let us say, a livestock, something like cattle, cows or buffaloes, for example? Can you control it? Yes, you can. You can control them. So they can be shown as your asset because these are resources which are controlled by the entity. However, human beings, can human beings be controlled? Typically no. Generally no. Generally no. So यार अपन बोलते हैं कि भाई आर्टिकलशिप में तो हमने सुना है कि हम पैसा भी कम मिलता है, हमको ये करना पड़ता है, वो करना पड़ता है, बराबर है. But if you want to leave, you can leave. Company, you want to leave, you can give a 1 month notice and you can leave. So the employer can give you instructions on how you should work. However, the employer cannot control. A cow cannot leave whenever the cow wants. अरे बराबर क्या नहीं, अपना उतना खराब हालत नहीं है. So as a result, over here you cannot typically control the human resources, and that is why, and this is a big dialogue, a discussion, जैसा बोलते हैं ना theory में, which happens in the accounting world, where people say that human resources are something which is so valuable. When you say Apple makes some of the best products, now you might argue to that, but one can say that that is because of the high quality designers that are there with Apple. However, can those designers, someone like Tim Cook or Steve Jobs, can they appear in the balance sheet of Apple? What do you guys think? Can they appear in the balance sheet of Apple? No, they can't, because, well, Apple cannot control Tim Cook or Steve Jobs, or Google cannot control Sundar Pichai, for example. So these are valuable resources. However, because the companies cannot control them, they can give a 1 or a 2 month or a 3 month notice and they can leave the company if they want to. And as a result, these resources cannot be shown in the balance sheet because you cannot exhibit control. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. This is more than sufficient from an inter-CS standpoint, but for an advanced understanding of this, if you guys follow, let us say, sporting events like the IPL, or let us say the English Premier League or the Champions League, for example, over there you will have these players like Mahendra Singh Dhoni is with Chennai Super Kings, or Lionel Messi was earlier with Barcelona, now moved to PSG, for example. Now these people are bound by contracts, if you're aware. So if you track, let us say, the world of football, you must have seen that last year, Lionel Messi had a fallout with Barcelona, the club, which has actually groomed Lionel Messi. They had a fallout, and one of the best, arguably one of the best football players of the world, also could not leave Barcelona midway because the terms of the contract were so stringent that if that person leaves, millions or even close to billions of euros had to be paid as penalty. So in that case, Barcelona can be said to have control over Lionel Messi, for example. And if you open Barcelona's balance sheet, you will see players' rights appearing as assets. Or if you open CSK balance sheet, you will see players' rights being shown as assets, because to that degree they can exhibit control, because a player cannot leave this franchise. Are we getting this? But that is not the case with employer-employee. वहाँ पे तो लिखा रहता है भाई 1 month notice दो और आप अपने रास्ते हम हमारे रास्ते. Yes, so in case control can be exhibited, like these players, if you open up their balance sheet, you will see players' licenses appearing as an intangible asset. So if a control can be exhibited, you can show them as an intangible asset, otherwise no. So this is the second point. Are we clear with this? Yes. And the third and the last point is the cost has to be measurable. According to me, this is the most important criteria, and because of this criteria, a lot of assets cannot be recognized. Cost has to be reliably measured. So a lot of times for internally generated assets, the cost cannot be reliably measured. Like when you are constructing a building, you can say, हाँ इतना material use हुआ, इतना labor use हुआ, इतना overheads use हुए. But for a lot of internally generated assets, it is very difficult to find the cost. Sometimes you can find the cost, sometimes you can't. So I mean, goodwill as such is not even identifiable. But if I were to go into the understanding for goodwill, let us assume goodwill was identifiable and goodwill could be recognized in the balance sheet. How will you find the cost of goodwill? How on earth is that possible? Sir, we look at Amazon. Do you think Amazon has goodwill? Do you think Amazon has goodwill? Yes, Amazon has goodwill. But this goodwill arises partly due to the advertisements. This goodwill arises partly due to the quality of products. This goodwill arises probably due to the customer support. This goodwill arises probably due to the quick pickup and refund. This arises due to a multiplicity of factors which you just cannot associate. You cannot differentiate the customer support that Amazon gives and say, हाँ, that is a part of goodwill. Well, that is a regular course of business. And as a result, it becomes very difficult to figure out what is the cost that has gone behind making the brand Amazon, and hence you cannot recognize that in the books of accounts. So something like Surf Excel, for example, Hindustan Unilever manufactures Surf Excel. Now it's very difficult to kind of identify the cost that Hindustan Lever has incurred behind creating the brand Surf Excel, and hence if it is an internally generated asset, if the cost is not reliably measured, you can't record it. So if something is not, accounting as a principle, that if something is not reliably determinable, rather than recognizing it at a wrong number, you don't recognize it. Rather than showing a wrong number, you show no number. And hence, if there are items where cost is not reliably measured, then you don't recognize it at all. Are we clear with this? Cost of a patent can be measured. Typically, yes. Typically, if I have a separate research and development center for which a team of scientists is working only for that, so you can understand कि हाँ कितना cost गया ये project के पीछे. However, if you have hundreds of different projects ongoing, scientists are juggling around different projects, and by the way, one of them succeeds, you cannot really figure out how much has the cost gone behind that one particular project. It is dependent on the facts and circumstances of each case. Are we clear with this? Yes. Okay. There was one more doubt, I guess, which I missed, where a student had asked that, sir, what about assignments where employees are made to sign bonds? Good question. Bonds, it depends on how big the bond value is. So, for example, if you are an employee whose salary is, let us say, 20,000 per month, and आपको 20 करोड़ का bond डाल के रखा है, well, definitely the employer has control over you, because आप 20 करोड़ लाओगे कहाँ से? However, if you are an employee who has a monthly salary of 20 lakhs, फॉर एग्जाम्पल हाईली पेड सक्सेसफुल सीईओ ग्रेड एम्प्लॉइज 20 lakhs पर मंथ का आपका सैलरी है और बॉन्ड में 5 लाख रुपया लिख कर रखा है. 5 lakhs इज नथिंग फॉर दैट सीईओ. 10 दिन का सैलरी भी नहीं है. सो यू हैव टू सी ऑन वेदर द terms and conditions of the bond are so stringent that it can exhibit control or it cannot. Remember, you are not studying physics, you are studying accounts, and in accounts a lot of things has to be judged based on facts. So you will have to look at the fact, the legal terms of the bond, and depending on that decide whether the employer is in a position to exercise control or not. Are we clear with this? Yes. Any other queries? Any other questions? Nahi? Acha. Sir, what is an employee bond? Employee bond means in the letter of employment, it might be said that you have to work with the company for 3 years, and if you leave before 3 years, you will have to pay an X amount of penalty. So you are bound with the company, bound to the company. Barabar? These are terms. Okay. So the next point is recognition of intangible assets. Intangible assets can be recognized in the books if the below mentioned criteria are met. First, they should meet the definition of an asset, of an intangible, that is, as discussed above, identifiable, non-monetary, lacking physical substance, etc. Second, it should be something that is controlled by the entity. अपन ने control के ऊपर काफी discussion किया. Like भेड़ बकरी को अपन control कर सकते हैं, but अपन भेड़ बकरी नहीं, अपने को नहीं कंट्रोल किया जा सकता. Should be controlled by the entity and should give future economic benefits. That is, this is a feature of an asset. For example, research expenses do not necessarily assure us of a future economic benefit, and hence we will study that research expenses may not necessarily be shown as an asset. And lastly, the cost has to be reliably measurable. This is circumstantial, depends on the facts. So if the cost can be measured and the other criteria are met, you can recognize the asset at cost. If it cannot be measured, then जो भी खर्चा आपने किया, it will be taken as an expense in the P&L, and you will not be able to show that as an asset in your books of accounts. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. Yes? Okay. Internally generated assets. These are assets which are internally generated. If the cost of an item is not reliably measurable, then we cannot recognize it as an asset. This is the reason why certain internally generated assets like self-generated goodwill or self-generated brands are not recorded as intangible assets, since the cost is not reliably measurable. We don't know how much exact money we have spent behind creating a particular brand or a particular goodwill. Second is human resources, a special case. Generally, where you have regular employment agreements, it cannot be shown as an asset as the entity cannot control them. If something is partly achieved via research, then it can be shown as an asset. We will study that. In the next section, we will study research and development. The moment something can be achieved, you move from the research phase to the development phase, for which separate guidance will be given that when can something be recognized as an asset under the development phase. Okay, are we clear with this? Yes, acha. So what we can do is we can stop for a short breather. We are halfway through in the lecture. We can stop for 5 minutes. Take your breath back. 5 minutes and we can continue. Okay? Okay, so I'll not stop the session as such. The session will continue, and in 5 minutes we can resume. So be back in 5 minutes. We will start in 5 minutes sharp. Okay? Okay, so we have understood what is meant by, we have hopefully understood what is meant by an intangible asset and when can it enter the balance sheet. But let us say, if it has to enter the balance sheet, at what value will you recognize it? Should you recognize it at fair value or should you recognize it at cost? Generally in accounts, what do you guys think? Do we recognize whether it is intangible asset, whether it is inventory, whether it is fixed asset? Typically, do you recognize it at cost or do you typically recognize it at fair value? What do you guys think? When, at what value do you recognize it initially in the books of accounts? At fair value. At okay, typically typically we will, okay, cost or market value, whichever is less, fair enough, I get your points. Typically at the time of initial recognition, you recognize it at the price that you have paid for the asset. Okay, let us say, let me ask you a question and hopefully you should be getting a better perspective. Typically, let us say you have a pair of jeans which you can see are selling at 2000. Now suddenly Shopper Stop comes out with a flash sale and it says that for the first 100 participants they will get these jeans at 1000 rupees. For example, you are one of those 1000 participants and you managed to buy it at 1000 rupees. In a matter of a few minutes, the price again jumps up to 2000. So one can say that the fair value of this pair of jeans is 2000 rupees. 2000 rupees. However, as a part of a deal, you could manage to get it at 1000 rupees. You paid 1000 rupees. What do you guys think? If these jeans were to be recognized as an asset in your balance sheet, hypothetically, at what value will you recognize it? Will you recognize it at the price that you have paid? That is the cost that you have paid, that is 1000. Or will you recognize it at the fair market value of this pair of jeans, which is 2000? It will be recorded at 2000. Okay, help me with the journal entry, please. Let us say the asset account debit 2000. You are saying 2000 to bank 1000. Where will the remaining 1000 go? 2000 less discount of 1000. Will you show it as a discount income? This is like a trade discount. Trade discount, I hope you are aware, is deducted while calculating cost. At what value will you recognize it? Whenever in doubt, always ask yourself the double entry system of accounting. The double entry generally clears a lot of problems. That is right. You recognize it at cost. Yes, undoubtedly, the fair value is 2000. However, you have paid 1000 rupees. If you have paid 1000 rupees, you will recognize it at 1000. That is because almost all accounting standards, whether it is AS 26 for intangibles, AS 10 for tangible assets, AS 13 for investments, you will study that, AS 2 for inventory. All of these standards say that bhaiya, initial recognition of an asset has to be at cost, that is the amount that you have paid for the asset. The market value may be higher, may be lower, what you have paid is the value. जैसे आप एक ऑडिट करके सब्जेक्ट पढ़ोगे तो ऑडिट में वो चेकिंग भी करने को होना चाहिए ना भाई, आपने 2000 पे रिकॉग्नाइज किया, कोई बोलेगा फेयर वैल्यू इज 2000, कोई बोलेगा 3000, कोई बोलेगा 1500. वेयर इज इट वेरीफाइबल? However, cost is verifiable looking at your invoice. Your invoice will show 1000 rupees, and as a result, that is something which is verifiable. Your bank statement will show 1000 rupees, and as a result, it is verifiable. Are we getting this? Are we clear with this? Yes, okay. And as a result, the initial recognition will be at cost. Subsequent recognition, we will see by cost less depreciation, cost or market value, whichever is lower, we will see how is to be done. But when you buy the asset, at the point when you are buying the asset, not just an intangible asset, it can be a tangible asset, it can be investments, it can be inventories, it can be any item. This is a generally accepted accounting practice to initially recognize any asset that you buy at cost. Are we getting this? Are we getting this? Yes? Okay. So, an intangible asset initially should also be recognized at cost. अच्छा चलो सर ठीक है, cost आपने बोल तो दिया, but cost में होता क्या है? So, let us say it is an intangible asset which is purchased. So, should the purchase price be a part of cost? For example, you are buying a telecom license or Domino's is buying the franchisee license. Should that purchase price be a part of cost? You guys tell me, yes or no? Yes, it will be a part of cost. The purchase price will be a part of cost. However, if there are certain discounts are of two types. There is trade discount, there is cash discount. Cash discount is typically a discount which you get for early payment, whereas trade discount is other than cash discount, which may be linked to quantity, which may be linked to your negotiation skills, it may be linked to any other factors. If you are aware, what do? Do you show trade discount as a separate income in your P&L account, or you reduce the trade discount and you show net? Perfect. So let us say you have something like a list price. There is a price in the list is 1000. However, you have managed to get this at 900 rupees. That is at a discount of 100 rupees. Then typically trade discount you subtract. Your actual purchase price is the list price less the trade discount. Does this make sense? Yes? Okay. Achha. Now there is a slightly challenging aspect. If you have done indirect taxes, you might be aware of it. If you have not done, you might have to have some patience. There is something called as indirect taxes. There are two types of taxes. There is direct tax, there is indirect tax. Indirect tax means there is something called as GST, if you are aware. So when you as a student go to a restaurant, for example, and in the restaurant the bill is 100, uske upar let us say sometimes there is 5, 10, 18 jo bhi hai, let us say there is an 18% GST and you have to pay 118. So what is the real cost of your dinner? Is the real cost of your dinner 100 or is the real cost of your dinner 118? What is the real cost of dinner for you as a person? Forget companies, for you as a person. It is usually 118. Why? Because ये जो 18 का GST आप पे कर रहे हो, you can't do anything with it. You can't do anything with it because you don't have a GST number. You are not registered under GST. And hence you can't claim something called as a credit. You will study that as a part of indirect taxes. It is another 2-hour discussion to explain how the credit mechanism works. However, what happens is, in short, in credit mechanism, if you have a GST number and if that item is allowed as a credit, then what can happen is, if you have to pay, let us say 30 rupees to the government as GST, you can say 30 में से 18 rupees का हमने credit ले लिया. You can take a credit. Are we getting this? Yes, okay. So over here, assuming you can't take credit, it is a real cost for you. If you can take credit, loosely speaking, very, very generically and loosely speaking, credit is very similar to you getting a refund. You don't actually get a refund, but it is like saying कि हाँ आज हमने 18 पे किया, future में we had to pay 18 to the government, but government बोलेगा कि नहीं, you don't pay 18, that is fine. So the liability that you had to the government is offset. ITC, input tax credit बोलते हैं इसको. So you can claim credit for certain taxes, or sometimes you can even claim a refund, like in customs duty. Sometimes if you are importing certain equipment so that you can manufacture goods that you can export, the government gives you what you call as duty drawback or a refund. So basically, if you are getting a credit for the duty or taxes you have paid, or if you are getting a refund of the taxes that you have paid, then is it really a cost? If you are getting a refund of 18 rupees that you have paid, or if you are getting a credit in your account for the 18 that you have paid, is it really a cost? No. However, if you are not getting any refund, like you as a student, when you go to buy a mobile phone, आप GST पे करते हो, उसका थोड़ी ना कोई क्रेडिट देता है, कोई रिफंड भी नहीं देता. Then for you, for all practical purposes, अपने को तो फाइनल जो प्राइस है वही अपने लिए रेलेवेंट प्राइस है. अरे yes or no? Okay. Okay. What do we do? What do we assume in the paper if nothing is mentioned? Okay, we will come to that. Generally, there are 3 types of indirect taxes, 4 types rather, which you might get in the paper. There might be GST, there might be customs duty, or what also called as import duty, there might be stamp duty, or there may be something like local taxes or levies. Typically, if nothing is mentioned, you will assume that the GST is creditable. Any other type of tax, whether it is custom duty, stamp duty, local taxes, purchase taxes, entry tax, unless it is otherwise given, you will assume that it is non-creditable. Sir, ऐसा क्यों? Well, we are not solving an indirect tax paper. We are solving an accounts paper. So ideally, institute should tell us कि भाई कोई creditable है या नहीं है. Generally, GST is creditable. However, if nothing is mentioned, it is open to you. In my past experience, based on the institute's solutions, they assume GST, if any, to be creditable. If nothing is given, any other type of tax can be called as entry tax, purchase tax, custom duty, stamp duty, local taxes and levies are all assumed to be non-creditable. Are we clear with this? Yes, okay. So over here, what will you add? You guys tell me. I will give you 2 options. You want to find the cost. For determining the cost, will you add refundable taxes, option A, or will you add non-refundable taxes, option B? That is right. So purchase price plus non-refundable, also called as non-creditable taxes. Non-refundable / non-creditable taxes. आप अपने आप का ही एग्जाम्पल लो. Whenever you pay for a particular asset or a particular item, अपन फाइनल अमाउंट देखते हैं. अपन बोलते हैं हाँ हमारे लिए दिस इज द कॉस्ट ऑफ द मोबाइल फोन. यस, उसके अंदर 28% या 20% या 18% जीएसटी होने दो. वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू बी इन अ पोजीशन टू क्लेम क्रेडिट, एंड एज अ रिजल्ट हमारे लिए दैट इंक्रीजेस द टोटल कॉस्ट फॉर द एसेट. Because for us, we don't get any credit, we don't get any refund for GST. Does this make sense? Yes, acha. Okay, so this is about taxes in terms of discounts. If there are any trade discounts, you will subtract the trade discounts while determining the cost, if any. अच्छा, intangible में तो इतने होते नहीं है, but when you look at tangible assets, there are a lot of other costs. A very simple example would be if you were to buy an air conditioner. You buy an air conditioner of 20,000 rupees, but someone has to come and install that air conditioner in your house. Does that installation happens free of cost? No. The technician will charge you, let us say, 1,500 rupees for installation. So 20,000 you have paid for buying the AC, and 1,500 you have additionally paid for the installation of the AC. What do you guys think? Should the installation cost be expensed to the profit and loss account, or should you say that the total cost of getting the AC in the ready to use condition is 21,500? That is right. It should be added to the cost, because the standards say that bhaiya, cost is something where the expenses that you incur to get the asset in the ready to use condition should all be taken along with the asset. Like if you were to go to the stock market and you were to buy shares, Reliance का आज के तारीख में share is available at, let us say, roughly 2,000 rupees. However, if you go to the stock market, you have to pay brokerage, STT, you have to pay stock exchange fees. ये सब मिला के you will pay 2,020 rupees. So that 20 rupees is also part of cost, because it is directly attributable to acquiring the asset. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. So like in an intangible asset, a classic example of this would be software. Let us say we are buying a software. Sometimes this software can be automatically installed, और अपन वो क्या करते हैं, install, run, next, दबाते दबाते finish हो जाता है और software is installed. However, if you are buying a software which is fairly complicated, a lot of expense goes behind that installation. Should that installation cost or implementation cost of a software also be added into the cost? Yes. Companies like Infosys, companies like TCS make a majority of their income by implementing complex softwares. Just to give you an example, have you heard about Tally accounting software? Yes. Tally is typically used by smaller companies. The bigger companies like Reliance, etc., almost all of them will use a software called as SAP. SAP करके एक software, आप Google भी कर सकते हो. Almost all of these big companies that you have heard of, all of them use SAP accounting software. Now, SAP is a highly customizable software, and TCS, Infosys spend probably close to a year or so, without any exaggeration, in just implementing SAP over the entire company. It takes a lot of time. So when I try to find the real cost of the SAP software, obviously I have to pay for acquiring the license to the software. That is a part of cost, but that implementation cost that I have to pay to these people who are implementing the software in my company, should that also be a part of the cost? Yes, that will also be a part of cost. There is also a question that, sir, what about extended warranty? Should extended warranty be a part of cost? The answer is no. Warranty is an expense which you are paying after the asset is ready for use. Warranty is not an expenditure that you pay in order to get the asset in the ready to use condition, and as a result, what you are going to add is only those expenses that you are incurring which are directly attributable in getting your asset in the ready to use condition. So implementation of a software, installation of a machine, all of these are necessary in order to get the asset in the ready to use condition, and hence they should be capitalized. So over here you will have directly attributable expenses which are incurred in order to get the intangible asset in the ready to use condition. Does this make sense? इसका कोई exhaustive list नहीं है. directly attributable expenses in order to get the asset in the ready to use condition. All of these expenses you will capitalize, and this will ultimately give you the cost of the intangible asset. Are we clear with this? Are yes or no? These are expenses which you are incurring in order to get the asset in the ready to use condition. Should this also include administrative expenses or selling or distribution expenses, advertising expenses? No, they will not be a part of the cost of the asset. Just to give you a simple example, when Google is, let us say, developing a particular software, then the amount that it pays to the people who are coding, developing that software, should that be a part of the cost of the software? Yes. Okay, now the software is ready. I want to launch the software. I call, let us say, Deepika Padukone or Virat Kohli, and I say, bhai, tum ribbon kholo, tum ye button dabao, and the software will be unleashed. I mean, unveiled. Should that cost be a part of the cost of the software? No, because this is something which is not directly attributable to developing. It is inauguration expense. It will go to the profit and loss account. It is like selling and distribution expense to create a publicity, to create a buzz, but it does not have, it does not need to be incurred to get the asset in the ready to use condition. Are we clear with this? Yes? Aja. So if we look at the initial recognition of an intangible asset, the intangible asset should initially be recognized at cost. At cost, the cost of an intangible asset which is purchased can be calculated as we have said, the purchase price should be a part of the cost. The non-refundable or non-creditable taxes should be a part of cost. Example, stamp duty. अभी तो आपके पास hard copy है नहीं, but otherwise if you can just make a note somewhere. So a student had asked, so it was a good question. So if nothing is given, you can keep a note somewhere. If nothing given, GST is assumed to be creditable. Other taxes, non-creditable. Does this make sense? Yes? Okay. Directly attributable expenses for acquisition, it can include some legal fees like a registration of a particular license, less trade discount, and this will give you the initial cost of an intangible asset. Perfect. Okay, one special case. We will discuss the theory today. As I said, आज थोड़ा आपका heavy lecture होगा, standard थोड़ा बड़ा है, so we'll cover up the theory today and we will do the sums tomorrow. There is a special case in case of a barter. Let us say there is a company X which owns a particular software, which is an intangible asset. What X does is, X gives up the software, and in return, X gets the telecom license, which is also an intangible asset. Now the problem arises that generally you are acquiring the intangible asset, which is telecom license. So generally in the invoice, you would usually have a rupee value saying that telecom license cost you 100 rupees. The problem is here in the invoice, you will be given that the telecom license, against the telecom license, the company has to give a particular software. So you can't find the rupee value. You can't really find the rupee value, right? Sorry, I have a slightly bad throat. So this is a barter transaction. It's a barter transaction. So if it's a barter transaction, how will you recognize the value in the books of X? For example, I'll make it slightly complex. Let us say the WDV, the written down value of the software in my books, is 4 lakh rupees. This is the ledger balance. Maybe this is the cost that I have incurred to develop the software. However, the market value, fair market value, FMV of the software is 5 lakh rupees. देखो टेलीकॉम लाइसेंस तो मेरे बुक्स में था ही नहीं, But the telecom license, let us say hypothetically, also has a fair market value of 5 lakhs. So I'm giving something which is worth 5 lakhs and I'm acquiring something worth 5 lakhs. In which case, if I have to recognize this transaction as per the double entry system of accounting, debit what comes in, credit what goes out. What is coming in? The software or the license? License. So the telecom license account debit, your journal entry will be telecom license account debit, debit what comes in, credit what goes out. What is going out? Software. Excellent. Debit what comes in, credit what goes out. Now my question 2 is, what is going out is software. Software के आपके दो values देके रखे. The WDV is 4 lakhs and the fair market value is 5 lakhs. Think and answer. Don't be impulsive. We are not playing fastest finger first. At what value should you credit the software in your ledger? Common sense. 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs? 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs? Very nice. All of you have correctly answered 4 lakhs. Why? Because sir, हमारे ledger में ही 4 lakhs. If we credit 5 lakhs, then you will show a negative balance of software of 1 lakh in your ledger. Are we understanding it? Yes. Okay. So software will be credited by 4 lakhs. It does not really matter what AS26 or any other standard tells you. Debit what comes in, credit what goes out. Software is going out. In my ledger, software was worth 4 lakh, and now software is not there in my ledger, so I'll have to eliminate it from my ledger. I will credit it by 4 lakhs. Perfect. अच्छा, now the challenge arises कि भैया telecom license हम कितने पे डेबिट करें? This is where AS26 comes in. This is the initial recognition. Initial recognition should typically be at cost. However, the problem over here is you can't. Cost should be the purchase price. The purchase price is the amount that you have paid, but here you have not paid in cash. You have paid by giving some other asset. So now comes the challenge: at what value will you recognize it? You don't have a rupee value. You don't have a rupee value, right? So at what value will you recognize a telecom license? You will recognize it at the fair market value. Does this make sense? Acha. The fair market value should be the fair market value of the software, should be the fair market value of the telecom license. Sir, अपन क्या फर्क पड़ता है? दोनों का 5 lakhs है. Usually दोनों 5 lakhs होना चाहिए, but what if it is not the same? That is when it will be a challenge. What if, let us say, the fair market value of the telecom license is 5,50,000, but the fair value of the software is only 5 lakhs. Which of the two values will you recognize? Which of the two values will you recognize? The fair market value, ideally, of whichever of the two which is more reliable. However, as a student, if nothing is given that which of the two is more reliable, so you will have to make a choice. Ideally, it is whichever of the two is more reliable. No, it's not lower of the two or anything. As a student, what most of you have answered seems to be right. Almost all of you have mentioned that bhai, theek hai, it should be the fair value of the license. However, this is where students make a mistake. This is wrong. You will recognize it always at the fair market value of the software given up. Sir, ऐसे कैसे possible? License 5,50,000 का है. Then I should take 5,50,000. Okay, let me put it this way. Let us assume this was not a barter. Think and answer. This was not a barter. This was an actual cash purchase. You were purchasing a telecom license which has a fair market value of 5,50,000, but you were paying a cash of 5 lakhs. Cash of 5 lakhs. What you are giving up is worth 5 lakhs. Now you tell me, should you recognize the telecom license at 5,50,000, which is a fair market value, or should you recognize it at 5 lakhs, which is what you have paid? Perfect. You have recognized it at 5 lakhs because it is cash. अरे तो cash के बदले यहाँ पे software है. The value of the asset is how much you are paying. Cost means आप कितना pay कर रहे हो. Are you paying 5,50,000 for the license? Are you paying 5,50,000 for the license? No. Sir, we are giving a software. But then what is the value of the software? Sir, it is 5 lakhs, which means implicitly, have you paid 5 lakhs or have you paid 5,50,000? 5 lakhs. The telecom license may be worth 5,50,000. Sir, it may be worth 5,50,000 even if you have acquired it for cash. How does it matter? The real cost of the asset is how much you are paying for the asset. And you are paying 5 lakhs for the asset. So if you are paying 5 lakhs for the asset, well, that is the cost of the asset. Are you getting this? But sir, then it can be appreciated to the fair market value later. No. If you follow something called as the revaluation model, we will study that. देखिए भैया एक revaluation model होता है, which is not compulsory. Almost every company that I am aware of follows a cost model. That is, they will show the asset at 5 lakhs and then they will keep on amortizing it or depreciating it. If you decide to follow the revaluation model subjected to certain conditions, that is when you can take it at the fair market value. with the credit going to the revaluation reserve, which you can take it whether you have acquired in cash or whether you have done a barter. So even if you have acquired by cash and paid 5 lakh rupees, still if you follow the revaluation model at subsequent recognition, and that too it's very rare that companies follow a revaluation model. If you follow the revaluation model, then subsequently you can take it to fair value. However, that will be routed through the revaluation reserve. It will not be routed through the profit and loss. Are we getting this? So yes, it does not depend on whether it's a barter or not a barter. It is depending on the method of accounting that you will subsequently decide. Okay, sir, but then the entry does not tally. So there is a balancing figure of 1 lakh. Where will the balancing figure of 1 lakh go? What do you guys think? Where will it go? Where will this go? Profit on sale. That is right. This is a profit on exchange or profit on sale or profit on barter, as the case may be. Typically, sorry. This is a profit on the transfer of the software. The software which was actually worth 5 lakhs, sorry, which was worth 4 lakhs in your books, fetched you 5 lakh rupees, and hence 1 lakh is recognized as a gain on sale, which can be taken in the profit and loss. Typically on the sale, you get cash. Here on the sale, you are getting some other asset, but the risk and reward of the software is no longer on you. It is transferred. कल उठ के भी वो software का value collapse भी हो जाता है, हमको फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Are we clear with this? Are yes or no? Yes, okay. So based on that, if you read the theory, special case on barter, in case the barter or exchange, the intangible should be recorded at fair value. This is generally the fair value of the assets given up or the fair value of the assets acquired, whichever is more reliable. Again, if the question arises, if nothing is given, कि भाई कौन सा ज्यादा रिलायबल है, लाइक एज अ स्टूडेंट आपको बोला है कि भाई फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ द लाइसेंस इज 5 lakhs, फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर इज 5,50,000 और व्हाटएवर इट इज, अपन बोलेंगे भाई हमको तो दोनों इक्वली रिलायबल दिख रहा है. सो अनलेस अ क्वेश्चन टेल्स यू कैन नॉट जज. सो इफ नथिंग इज गिवन, it will be based on fair value of the asset given up, which is a software. Logically, this is because this is the amount that you are paying for the asset. Good to go? Okay, then you have subsequent expenditure. That is, the asset is now ready for use and subsequently certain expenditure is incurred. What do you typically do? Asset is ready for use, it is operational, and then certain expenditure is incurred. I'll just give you an example of a tangible asset first, because you are much more accustomed to tangible assets, and then draw a parallel to the intangible asset. Let us say you were to buy a car. If you were to buy a car, just for understanding, the purchase price that you pay should be a part of cost. Apart from that, the RTO charges, the registration charges that you pay should also be a part of cost. However, once a car is ready for use, you pay to someone so that the person regularly cleans the car. Should those cleaning expenses be a part of the cost of the car? The answer is no. Aja, you do a regular servicing of the car. Every year you do servicing of the car. Should that servicing expense, maintenance expense, be a part of the cost of the car? No, perfect. Exactly. So typically subsequent expenditure should not be added to the cost of the asset. It should be expensed to the P&L account. This is in the nature of repair or in the nature of maintenance. And hence the asset is capable of generating cash flows. The asset is capable of being used. And hence matching concept says कि भाई ठीक है, asset use करके आप income generate करते रहोगे, तो सामने जो भी cost आएगा, you will take it to the profit and loss account. Match the incomes along with the cost. Does this make logical sense? Yes? Okay. So subsequent expenditure is typically going to be expensed to the P&L account. However, in certain cases, you can incur subsequent expenditure which increases either the life or increases the efficiency of the asset beyond what is originally assessed. I'll again repeat, you can incur certain expenditure which increases the life or increases the efficiency of the asset beyond what is originally assessed. For example, when you were to buy a car, you must have seen that, let us say the car manufacturer advertises that bhaiya ye gaadi gives you a mileage of 20 kilometers on every liter. Mileage, if you are aware, how many kilometers a car can run for 1 liter of petrol, or for 100 rupees, let us say, worth of petrol. Now what you do is you install there is a CNG system for, let us say, roughly 50,000 rupees. You install a CNG system. You must have seen this in Ola and Uber. अपन पहले पीछे लगेज डालने जाते हैं, अपन बोलते हैं अरे लगेज के बदले यहाँ पे तो वैगनआर में पीछे एक बड़ा मशीन डाल के रखा है. That is typically a CNG system. You install a CNG system in your car, which is costing 50,000 rupees. But because of the CNG system, the car becomes a lot more economical. For 100 rupees worth of gas, it can run, let us say, roughly 50 kilometers. It is a lot more efficient. What will you do with that cost of 50,000? Will you capitalize that cost into the cost of the asset, or will you expense it to the P&L account? This is subsequent, a few years later after you have bought the asset. Capitalize, that is exactly right, because it increases the, we don't know about the life, but it increases for sure the efficiency of the asset beyond what is originally assessed, and hence you will capitalize. That same logic applies also for intangible asset. For example, in case of an intangible asset, you guys tell me, if I have a telecom license for 5 years, however, I pay renewal fees and extend it by another 5 years. Should this renewal fees be capitalized, or should this be expensed to the P&L account? Should this renewal fees be added to the capitalized, means should it be added to the cost of the intangible asset? Yes. Why? Because it increases the life of the asset beyond the originally assessed life. So what was 5 years is now, let us say, 10 years. It should be added to the cost, capitalized. Second example, India has close to 29 or 30 states, but let us say it has 23 telecom circles. Telecom circles, where it's 23 telecom circles. You had a license to operate in only 15 of them. You now pay an additional amount to get a license to operate in the other 8 circles as well. What do? Should you capitalize, or should you expense that to the profit and loss? Capitalize, because it increases the productivity, or it increases the efficiency of the asset. Yes, you are using the license for 5 years only. However, this license can now give you a right to operate in all the 23 circles, and hence it should be capitalized, should not be expensed to the profit and loss account. However, the government says that every year you have to get audit of the operations of the license done, and that audit report has to be submitted to the government. So you have to pay a said amount to an auditor for a regular annual audit. What do? Should you capitalize that, or should you expense it to the profit and loss account? Expense it to P&L. I guess you have got a sense of what I'm trying to say. In general, if an expense increases the life or increases the efficiency beyond what is originally assessed, you will capitalize it. Otherwise, you will expense it to the profit and loss account. Barabar? Okay, so when we look at subsequent expenditure can be the nature of regular repair or regular maintenance. Intangible में जैसा repair तो नहीं होगा, but maintenance. The general rule is you will expense it to the P&L account, and hence the journal entry will be expenditure account debit, which will go to the P&L to bank. Maintenance expense account debit, like that audit fee example, to bank. Second is it increases the life or increases the productivity beyond what is originally assessed, like the renewal or like operating in additional telecom circles beyond what is originally assessed. Typically it will be capitalized along with the intangible assets. That is, the entry will be intangible asset account debit to bank. Are we clear with this? Chalo, great. Next you will go to research and development. You will definitely mark this as important. Very important from an exam standpoint. This is particularly the case for a lot of pharmaceutical companies or a lot of software companies. The expenditures that they incur in developing new products like new medicines or new vaccines or new softwares, how should they account for this expense? The standard gives you guidance, notably for these companies, where the standard says that you will have to first figure out whether the expenditure incurred is in the research phase or whether the expenditure incurred is in the development phase. Okay, sir, when do we say that it is research? When do we say it is development? Well, if the expenditure is incurred during the ideation phase. आइडिएशन मीन्स जैसे अपन हिंदी में बोलते ख्याली पुलाव. वी हैव एन आइडिया, we don't know whether that will be translated into reality or not. That is an ideation phase. For example, flying motorbikes as of now is an idea. This is what people are saying as we speak is the future of commuting. Decades later there will be flying motorbikes. Or if you are aware, Elon Musk is developing something called as hyperloop. अगर आपने सुना रहेगा वो वैक्यूम में फुल स्पीड पे कुछ जाता है. So these are, let us say, I mean, I'm not going to technical details, I'm just saying that one can say that probably we are going to transport people through a vacuum, or we are going to have flying motorbikes. Have you developed something as of now? Probably the answer is no. It is just an idea कि भाई इतना congestion हो रहा है तो maybe we use the airwaves for, or not the airwaves, the air to, let us say, travel. So ये तो अब तक idea है. You have started work on it. You have not even been close to developing a prototype. So are you in the research phase or are you in the development phase? What do you guys think? R for research, D for development. Research. You can write the short form. Research. That is right. Same goes for vaccines that we were earlier discussing, and I said that I'll come to this later. Or let us say medicines. We'll go to HIV/AIDS. So we have been doing a lot of tests, we have been doing a lot of experiments in order to find a cure to kill the HIV virus. We have not been successful. But our idea is that we want to develop a molecule which can kill the HIV virus. Are we in the research phase or are we in the development phase? R, that is right, the research phase. Okay, one fine day we develop a molecule. जैसे वाटर का अपना जैसे लूजली स्पीकिंग H2O है या फिर सॉल्ट का NaCl मॉलिक्यूल होता है. So we develop a molecule, a formulation, इसको मेडिकल लैंग्वेज में बोलते हैं, formulation which can kill the HIV virus. So now that idea is a reality. The idea was to develop a vaccine, or the idea was to cure. A vaccine is generally developing an immune system. A medicine is typically what cures you if you are infected. So the idea was to cure HIV/AIDS. Now you have found a molecule which can kill the HIV/AIDS. Can we say that the research phase ends? Yes. And from that point onwards, is the molecule ready for use? Can you now start giving injections to patients? No. There is a long development phase. There's a fairly long development phase. And in this development phase, what you will do is you will do a lot of other trials. कि भैया ठीक है, if I give this molecule to people, what is the side effects? But people के पहले unfortunately बहुत सारे जानवर आ जाते हैं. There are monkeys, there are rats. Rats are supposed to be the most resilient creatures. अगर rat बीमार पड़ता है तो आदमी तो ऊपर ही पहुंच जाएगा. So there are rats, rabbits, monkeys, unfortunately जिनके ऊपर ये सब पहले टेस्ट होता है. उसके बाद देयर इज अ स्मॉल सैंपल ऑफ पीपल जिनके ऊपर ये वापस टेस्ट होता है. यू स्टडी द रिएक्शंस, उसके बाद यू सबमिट द रिजल्ट्स, देन यू सी वेदर व्हाट आर द साइड इफेक्ट्स, हाउ कैन वी रिड्यूस द साइड इफेक्ट्स, शुड वी गिव देम एज अ टैबलेट, शुड वी गिव देम एज अ सिरप, शुड वी गिव देम एज एन इंजेक्शन, विद व्हाट फ्रीक्वेंसी शुड इट बी गिवन. फॉर एग्जांपल, there is a very long process that happens before the medicine is available on the shelf of the chemist. That entire phase is a development phase. समझ में आता है अपने को? Yes, this is also possible in case of automotives or in case of other softwares. Like for example, if you are aware, Tesla है, Google Alphabet है, they are टेस्टिंग ऑन दैट ड्राइवरलेस कार. अभी तो वो एक्चुअली रोड्स पे भी थोड़ा आना चालू हो गया. अपने यहाँ पे तो अपन सोच ही नहीं सकते ड्राइवरलेस गाड़ी के बारे में, बट नेवरदलेस इंटरनेशनली दे हैव स्टार्टेड. बट लेट अस अज्यूम दैट यू वर इन द फेजेस. इनिशियली यू आर डूइंग रिसर्च कि भाई ऐसा ड्राइवरलेस गाड़ी पॉसिबल है क्या. just to give you perspective, the first time a driverless car was shown in an auto expo was in the year 1939 by General Motors. 1939, way back, where there was nothing close to having that technology. General Motors said that one day we will develop something where you will not even need a driver. That was a concept car. तभी वो ख्याली पुलाव था. But then technology developed decades later. Google, Tesla, etc. managed to get a technology, managed to find a solution whereby they would have a software whereby the car will navigate itself. Now you developed a software through which the car can drive. However, it took close to a decade before approval was given for that car to enter the road, because भैया ये तो लोगों के जान के साथ खेलने वाला बात है. If you are unable to detect a particular event and if you are unable, the driverless car is unable to brake at the right time, people's lives can be lost. So there will be a huge development phase. Are we getting this? And as a result, what we are talking about is the expenditure during these two distinct phases. So if the expenditure is during the research phase, the standard is very clear. यहाँ पे तो भैया आप तो सिर्फ ख्याली पुलाव पे पका रहे हो कि भाई we have an idea to cure AIDS, we have an idea that cars will drive without drivers, we have an idea that motorbikes will fly. We have not found anything which is technically possible, in which case future economic benefits are not certain. So what should you do with expenditure during the research phase? You guys tell me. Should you expense it or should you capitalize it? Expense it to P&L. अपने को कुछ देखना ही नहीं है यार. यहाँ पे standard is very clear. So if expenditures are incurred during the research phase, that is the ideation phase where you still have an idea, then all the expenses will be expensed to the P&L account. You will not capitalize it. The logic is because future economic benefits are not certain, then you cannot recognize it as an asset. Acha. However, what should you do with the expenses which are incurred during the development phase? Should you capitalize it? Now are future economic benefits certain? No, not necessary. The standard says कि भैया ठीक है, आप intangible asset को भी develop कर रहे हो. You are getting a patent. You are developing a patent in your name. However, that does not mean you blindly capitalize all the expenditure which is incurred during the development phase. Sir, why so? Well, the standard puts close to 4 conditions whereby if these 4 conditions are satisfied, that is when expenditure which is incurred in the development phase can also be capitalized. First of all, the product has to be technically feasible. What does this mean? Well, you might have developed a concept car, for example, like in the last auto expos that happened अभी तो 1-2 साल से नहीं हो रहा है, in 2020 or 19, there close to 6 companies had shown flying motorbikes models थे, but ये concept car होते. Concept car are types of cars वो जो जेम्स बॉन्ड की गाड़ी रहते हैं ना, उड़ भी सकते हैं, कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. These are concept cars. Cars as a matter of concept, not actual cars. However, they did not have the technical prowess or capabilities to build a motorbike. They said, okay, we are trying to work on this. In which case, is a product technically feasible? Is a product technically possible as of now? The answer is no. And as a result, you might have developed a prototype, but if you don't have the available resources or technical ingredients to manufacture that, expenditure which is incurred even during the development phase should be taken to the P&L, because you cannot develop it. Then what is the point of you will not be able to generate future economic benefits till the time it is technically possible. You are looking for a very lightweight metal which does not exist as of now. You are trying to develop such a metal, let us say hypothetically. Second is the asset should be something which is legally permissible or legally possible. For example, if you are doing, if you are reading online, you must have seen that a lot of research is happening these days in what is called as a cannabis research, whereby ये जब जो bad boys अपन मानते हैं, bad boys like the opium, heroin, cocaine, जो चरस गांजा अपन बोलते हैं, all of these, are they legally permitted to be consumed? The answer should be a clear no, I guess. No. However, people are now doing research. They are saying कि भाई ठीक है यार, these are long ignored items. Probably they do have medicinal values, and hence there is a lot of cannabis research which is happening internationally as well, whereby they are looking at these drugs and they are saying, okay, these drugs can actually cure some particular ailments as well. In which case, let us say अपन भी ये रिसर्च करने लगे. अभी अपन देख रहे हैं कि भाई बेसिक सर्दी खांसी बुखार आता है तो उसके अंदर ये कोकेन वाला ड्रग अपन बना सकते हैं जो क्योर कर सकता है उसको. डू यू थिंक द गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू अप्रूव consuming cocaine for basic sardi khasi bukhar? No, it is very unlikely. Now you don't really know, but I mean, you might be saying कि भाई ठीक है, you never know, one thing can lead to the other can lead to the next, and we can probably, so you are doing research, अभी अपना उल्टा खोपड़ी है, we are doing that research, however, or we are doing the development, we have found that there is a molecule which contains, let us say, cocaine, hypothetically, which can cure a particular basic ailment. However, all the advisors are saying कि भाई इसका आपको legal approval तो मिलने से रहा, but we are still going ahead. We will say कि ठीक है यार, एक बार बनाते हैं, उसके बाद देखेंगे legal approval नहीं मिला तो क्या tweak कैसे करने का, we will see that. So over here, if the legal approval is unlikely, then what is the point of showing that as an asset? Because if you are not legally permitted to sell that, well, you're not going to get future economic benefits. Does this make sense? Yes. So for something to be shown as an intangible asset during the development phase, it can be capitalized if that asset is technically possible to be made. It is expected to be legally permissible to be sold. And third, it is expected to be financially feasible. Sir, why financially feasible? Because generally asset is something where you are expected to get future economic benefits. So there has to be a financial feasibility. There has to be a market for the products that you are making. Just to give you a very basic example so that you understand, this is just for academic understanding. It's not the right way to portray things, but nevertheless, have you heard about something called as Ebola? Okay, Ebola was had come a few years earlier. It infected large parts of Africa. Thankfully, India, etc. was saved. Now you are doing research and you managed to develop a drug now which can cure Ebola. Now it is technically possible for you. You think legal permission भी मिलेगा, but market किधर? Right now, let us say people in India are not infected by Ebola, which means even if you make a drug which can cure Ebola, people are not, I mean, Ebola is kind of eradicated, or polio is kind of eradicated from the country. So who is going to consume your medicine? And as a result, भाई आपके पास चलो drug है, but वो drug का कोई future economic benefit नहीं दिख रहा है. And as a result, what is the point of capitalizing some expenditure as an asset, because you are not going to be able to generate a future economic benefit? Does this make sense? Yes? Okay. So over here, it has to be financially feasible. You should not be making something जिसका market ही नहीं है actually. Okay. And lastly, cost has to be measurable. If you can't measure the cost reliably, you can't recognize any asset, let alone development asset. So if all these four conditions are satisfied, that is when expenditure incurred during the development phase can be capitalized. If any of these conditions are not fulfilled, then expenditure incurred during the development phase will be expensed to the P&L account. Okay. Now I'll come back to that vaccine example. So hopefully you should be getting a sense. Come December 2019, in Wuhan, there is a virus that comes in which goes by the name of coronavirus, which is COVID. There is panic across the world. A lot of pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, a lot of these big companies start the research for finding a vaccine which can build immunity for this virus. So they start the research. Somewhere in the middle of 2020, AstraZeneca comes and it says that it has developed a formulation which, according to it, can develop antibodies for against the coronavirus. Barabar. So all the expenditures that it incurred between December 2019 to, let us say, June of 2020 in all of this entire phase, were we sure that future economic benefits will be generated? Were we sure that we will be able to generate a vaccine? No. There were hundreds and thousands of companies which started this research. Only a few of them could actually come across with a vaccine. So what do you guys think? The expenditure that is incurred during this intermediate phase, should it be capitalized or should it be expensed? Expense to the P&L. Perfect. Now it has found a formulation for the vaccine. However, it has to do clinical trials, it has to develop this, it has to do a lot of other works, and by December 2020, let us say approvals are received. It spends further expenditure during this phase. Should the expenditure during these 6 months be shown as research expense or a development expense? Development expense. Should it be capitalized or expense? Well, it depends. Do you think it is technically possible? Well, we think that ingredients are available. Do you think that the government will give an emergency approval? Well, we do think it will give. Do you think there is a market? Well, say about the market, आजकल तो booster dose का market चालू है. There is a market and the cost probably is measurable, in which case the expenditure incurred during this phase can be capitalized as an intangible asset. Are we getting this now? Yes, okay. So if any of these conditions are not fulfilled, then even expenditure during the development phase will be taken to the profit and loss account. We have explained what is the meaning of the words research. We have explained the meanings of the words development. What is research? It is the ideation phase. It is basically the phase of the idea. That is the activity of creating or inventing a new product or process. It's the idea phase, and development follows successful research. Once the research is completed, that is when the development phase starts. That is a process of converting the result of a successful research into a marketable product. Make sense? Can we proceed? We are almost at the end of the standard. Can we proceed? Yes, okay. So this takes care of research and development. The last part, or kind of the last part of the standard, is amortization. Once you recognize an asset as an intangible asset, will it continue to be shown as an intangible asset in the balance sheet permanently, perpetually? No. Let us say you recognize a car, which is a tangible asset, in your balance sheet. Do you continue to show the car perpetually in your balance sheet? No. What do you do with the car? Over its useful life, what do you do with the car? You depreciate it. Among other things, depreciation writes off the balance of the asset over the time. Depreciation is a classic manifestation of the matching concept. Once the car is ready for use, the car is capable of generating revenue, like a cab can generate revenue, so it shows income. So you match the income with the cost. So you are able to generate that income because you're using the car, but the car has a specified life of around 10 years, and hence as each year passes, a part of the car is to be expensed off. In a similar way, intangible assets might also have a finite life. So for what is depreciation for a tangible asset, the word is amortization for an intangible asset. So like a tangible asset depreciates, an intangible asset amortizes. Are we getting this? Yes? Okay. Amortization is very similar to a write-off. That is correct. It is like depreciation. Like intangible asset amortizes. But then the amortization should be over how many years? Well, it depends. If your intangible asset has a finite life. Sir, can intangible assets have finite life? Yes. It is like patents are given for a specified number of years. After that, they become, आजकल वो टर्म काफी चल रहा है, अगर आपने सुना रहेगा, जेनेरिक मेडिसिन. हैव यू हर्ड द वर्ड्स जेनेरिक मेडिसिन? काफी सस्ते में मिलते हैं आपको एज कंपेयर टू पेटेंटेड मेडिसिन. सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज pharmaceutical companies like Sun Pharma might do a research. They might find a particular formula, a particular formulation. That formulation government says कि भाई तुमने इतना research किया, तुमने इतना खर्चा किया, 10 years तक तुम्हारे पास exclusive right है. You can use this. But at the end of 10 years, this is something which is for the larger good of the society. You have done the research, so as an incentive for 10 years, we will give you the exclusive right to manufacture and sell. However, after 10 years, anyone can use that formulation and sell it. So people, अपने इंडिया में काफी लोग रिवर्स इंजीनियरिंग में तो बहुत होशियार है. सो पीपल से हाँ यार ये दवाई में तो ये मॉलिक्यूल गया है, 10 साल के बाद Sun Pharma cannot sue us. It is available to the world at large, so we can manufacture and sell it at a much more concessional price. So generic medicines as such are very safe. In fact, they are same as the regular medicines. But you typically can sell them after the patent period is over. Are we getting this? So this is a patent for a finite life. So this is there everywhere for a copyright, for let us say even a feature film, etc. They are subjected to copyright for 10-15 years, after which they can be played or they can be used by any person who wants to use them. So there are certain assets where there is a finite life, but there are certain assets where there can be an indefinite life. So for example, Tata का जो T है, the trademark of Tata is going to remain with Tata indefinitely till the time Tata continues. और जो जैगवर है, जैगवर जो गाड़ी टाटा ने अक्वायर किया, if you have seen, उसमें वो जैगवर है जैसा कूदता हुआ रहता है, इस जंपिंग, और प्यूमा है, प्यूमा का जो सिंबल है, और नाइकी का जो टिक मार्क है, all of these are trademarks which are not for a finite period, they are for an indefinite period with these respective brands. Are we getting this? So like Tata, when it acquires Jaguar and Land Rover as a part of amalgamation or as a business combination, it has acquired it from Ford. When Tata acquires Jaguar and Land Rover, it also acquires the rights to use that symbol of Jaguar, and which can be recognized as an intangible asset, probably under the amalgamation or business combination standard. However, that asset has an indefinite life. It has an infinite life. आपको समझ में आ रहा है? वो जैगुआर का सिंबल तो अपन indefinitely यूज कर सकते हैं. Are yes or no? Yes. Okay. So this is where the complication arises. You don't have a specified life. Typically tangible asset में problem नहीं होता है. Tangible assets like building, vehicles, aircrafts, ships, everything, sooner or later they will wear out. But intangible है तो wear out, it does not have a physical substance. How will it wear out? And as a result, it will not physically wear out. अच्छा, tangible asset में एक asset है जिसको अपन बोलते हैं land. Do you depreciate land? No, because land has been in existence for thousands, lakhs and millions of years, and hence land has a proven infinite life, and hence the standard says कि भाई ठीक है यार, AS10 says उसको आप depreciate मत करो because land continues for millions of years. However, companies, trademarks, patents, for example, do you know of any company that has survived for 10,000 years? For example, from the Egyptian or Roman Empire आज तक कोई survive किया हुआ रहेगा? Not, unlikely. And as a result, the standard believes के भैया देखो, intangible एक ऐसा चीज है, उसको land के साथ equate नहीं कर सकते. Someone will say land has an infinite, indefinite life. Land is not depreciated, so intangible should also not be amortized. अपन बोलते भाई शांत रहो. The formulators, ICAI believes कि भैया land को आप एक ट्रेडमार्क के साथ कंपेयर करो, वो सही नहीं है. लैंड हैज अ प्रूवन एग्जिस्टेंस ऑफ लैक्स एंड थाउजेंड्स एंड मिलियंस ऑफ इयर्स, सो लैंड विल कंटिन्यू. इट इज स्कैर्स, बट कंपनीज, नो मैटर हाउ गुड they are sooner or later, some or the other day, their value will go down. We don't know when, but their value can go down. And as a result, to say कि भाई because you don't depreciate land, you will not depreciate these assets which have an infinite life, वो सही नहीं है. And hence AS10 stipulates a particular life. It says कि भाई if you are unable to determine the life of a particular intangible asset, वो सही है, गलत है, debatable है, but this is what is written in the standard. AS26 stipulates and it says that for an intangible asset which does not have a definite or a finite life, you will have to amortize it over a 10-year time frame. This is written in black and white in the standard because this would result, this is what you call as standardizations. People would say कि नहीं भाई ये एसेट का लाइफ ही नहीं है, कोई बोलेगा इसका 200 साल लाइफ है, 500 साल लाइफ है, हमको फिर स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन नहीं आएगा. एंड हेंस AS26 says that if you are unable to determine the life, sooner or later this asset will wear out, so you will have to write it off over a period of 10 years. Sir, is a 10-year life the maximum life for any intangible asset? No. If your asset is a finite life, so for example, the government has given a patent to you for a period of, or a telecom license to you for a period of 20 years. Is that an infinite life? Is that an infinite life? No, it is not an infinite life. And as a result, you can spread it over 20 years, or can you spread, you will have to spread it over 10 years. आपको क्या लग रहा है? 20 years, because you can clearly see that the life is beyond 10 years. So वो स्टैंडर्ड आपको बोलते हैं कि भाई ठीक है, 10 ईयर का ऐसा गले यानी सर पे बंदूक नहीं डाले कि आपको 10 ईयर्स डालना ही है. इफ यू आर अनेबल टू डिटरमाइन, तो हम बोलते हैं तुमको 10 ईयर्स लेना है. इफ यू कैन क्लियरली सी फ्रॉम द लाइसेंस दैट द लाइफ इज 20 ईयर्स, देन यू स्प्रेड इट ओवर 20 ईयर्स, amortize it over 20 ईयर्स, चलेगा, दैट्स फाइन. However, if you are unable to determine the life, then the standard says then you can spread it over a maximum 10-year time frame. If you are unable to determine the life of a particular asset, then you have to spread it over a maximum 10-year time frame. Okay, so question is, what if the value appreciates? Well, you are doing accounting based on the principles of cost. You can also buy inventories, and inventories value can also appreciate. That does not mean you show the value of inventory at the fair market value. you will show the inventory at cost only. So in a similar way, if the value of an intangible asset, whether it is having a finite life or whether it is having an infinite life, if the value appreciates, we are not in the business of selling the intangible asset, we are in the business of using it. And hence, whether it is a tangible asset, intangible asset, having a finite life, infinite life, it does not really matter whether the value appreciates or not, because you are holding the asset for the purpose of use in the ordinary course of business and not for the purpose of sale in the ordinary course of business. And as a result, it will not really matter. So when we look at, can you please repeat the Tata and Jaguar symbol wala part? Okay, so when Tata acquires Jaguar, it acquires the trademarks. It acquires the trademark of Jaguar, and this trademark of Jaguar will be available for use for Tata for the remaining period. जितना भी वो period चलेगा, वो Jaguar का symbol Tata ही use कर सकता है और कोई नहीं use कर सकता है अपने गाड़ी के आगे, for example. In which case, the question arises कि भैया टाटा के लिए intangible asset है, yes, it has acquired and bought this from Ford, so it knows कि भाई मैंने ये Jaguar के trademark के लिए कितना पे किया. The cost is determinable. It is not self-generated asset, it is an acquired asset. Now the challenge is कि भाई ये जो trademark है इसको अपन amortize कैसे करें, because the trademark does not have a finite life. Like patent, copyright might have a finite life, but trademark does not have a finite life. जितने टाइम तक आपको चलना है वो मार्क आप ही यूज करोगे. So how will you amortize it? Well, one can argue and say कि भाई ये land के जैसा है तो we will not amortize it. AS says no. If you are unable to determine a finite life, then you will have to spread it over a 10-year time frame. Are we clear with this? Yes? Okay. Finite or 10 years wala bhi please. Okay. So if your intangible asset has a finite life, which is clearly determinable, then you will amortize it over the finite life only. That finite life can be more than 10 years also. However, if your asset has a indeterminable life, you are unable to determine indefinite life, infinite life or indeterminable life, you are unable to determine कि भाई इसका life क्या होगा, then the standard says that the maximum time frame over which you can amortize is 10 years. So if you can clearly determine a life, you will take the finite life for the purpose of amortization, which can be less than 10 years, which can be more than 10 years. But if your life is not certain, then a maximum cap is put of 10 years, which is as per AS. Whether it is right or wrong is debatable, but this is there in the accounting standards. Are we clear with this? In case due to trademark, Jaguar was bought at a higher cost. In this case, due to the trademark, I did not understand the question. So it was for sale or to be sold. I'm still not getting the question. Generally, the brand Jaguar is acquired so that Tata can actually manufacture cars of Jaguar and sell the cars of Jaguar and not sell the brand name of Jaguar, is my understanding. So it would be at fair market value, not cost for Jaguar accounts. Fair market value can be done only if the accounting standards permit. So if you want to show it at fair market value, and you can take the revaluation model and you will show it using the revaluation model as per AS 10 or AS 26 as a case may be. But usse another doubt, and why not patent of medical company? Tata will have to give up on Jaguar symbol of after 10 years. No, you don't have to give up of the symbol. It is just that in the books of accounts it will not appear, because otherwise क्या होगा, books of accounts में वो खर्चे में जाएगा ही नहीं. So people will keep on saying that this will stay with us indefinitely and hence we will not amortize. So matching concept क्या बोलता है, sooner or later the amount that you have paid is for generating certain future economic benefits. So आपने अगर 1 billion pounds pay किया, let us say 9,000 crores, that 9,000 crores has to be spread over a number of years. अभी कितने years हम तो we are not able to determine a useful life. So the standard says if you are not able to determine useful life, 10 years will be the life that you have to take. This is the maximum limit that you have to take. आपको समझ में? So the symbol will be there with me even beyond that. However, what should you do? Well, it has to be written off. So AS 26 says that in cases where you are unable to determine the life, you will have to write it off over a maximum 10-year period. This is a clause which is there in your accounting standard. Just to give you as a background, Ind AS or the international accounting standards have done away with it. They said ठीक है भाई, life ज़्यादा है तो ज़्यादा है, यू विल नॉट राइट इट ऑफ, बट वो मैं आपको बता रहा नहीं था बिकॉज वो आपको कंफ्यूजन क्रिएट करेगा. एएस में ऐसा प्रोविजन नहीं है, सो टिल द टाइम दैट प्रोविजन इज नॉट देयर. आफ्टर 10 years anyone can use it? No. After 10 years also still Jaguar can only use it. It is like saying okay, आप tangible और intangible में कंफ्यूज हो रहे हो. आपके पास गाड़ी है, गाड़ी का यूजफुल लाइफ 10 years है. You have a 10 lakh rupees car and the useful life of the car is 10 years. You use the car for 10 years. You depreciate the car fully in your books of accounts. Will government come and tell you that after 10 years sell this car, now you cannot use it? You guys tell me. Forget intangible asset, tangible asset. आपको लगा था यूजफुल लाइफ गाड़ी का 10 साल है, 10 साल आपने यूज किया. आप अभी गाड़ी तो अभी भी आपने तो बहुत अच्छे कंडीशन में यूज किया, गाड़ी अभी भी चल रहा है, बट बिकॉज यू एस्टिमेटेड द यूजफुल लाइफ टू बी 10 years, you have depreciated the car to zero value. Does that mean someone will put a gun on your head and say कि नहीं भाई अभी आपको गाड़ी बेचना पड़ेगा? No. So the asset is legally yours. You can keep on using it, but you had to write it off. तो हमने सोचा कि भाई गाड़ी तो यूजुअली 10 साल चलेगा. We wrote it off in the form of depreciation over a 10-year time frame. After 10 years, if the car is still there, you can still continue using the car. If the car is not there, you will scrap off the car. So whether you can use or not depends on the legal conditions. It has nothing to do with whether the item appears in your ledger or it does not appear in your ledger. Are we clear with this? But sir, you will have an asset which is not shown in the financials. That is very much possible. उसमें क्या problem है? अगर asset है आपने fully write off कर दिया, it is not there in your financials, that is absolutely fine. There can be situations where the asset you have is fully written off, which is the case for the car also, which can be the case for an intangible also. Are we getting this? Yes, is everyone clear? Okay, so we will look at amortization. What does the principle of amortization say? Amortization refers to the writing off of the intangible asset over its useful life. The only challenge over here is tangible में कभी ये problem आता नहीं है, because tangible asset sooner or later it will physically wear out, it will break down. Intangible तो touch feel से नहीं कर सकते, and hence there might be cases where you might not have a definite useful life, and hence the challenge arises. That is, amortization of an intangible asset is similar to depreciation for a tangible asset. Okay, amortization can be for assets with a finite life, like a legal life, like patents or copyrights. The amortization over here should be done on a systematic basis. Sir, systematic basis क्या हो सकता है? Well, it can be SLM if you are aware, straight line basis. It can be WDV, the written down value, the units of production basis, or any other basis that evidences the pattern in which economic benefits can be obtained. I'll again repeat, it can be any basis which systematically evidences the pattern in which you will receive the economic benefits. Like for example, when you look at a mine अपन बोलते हैं usually you should amortize based on the units of production. अगर mine में नीचे 10 tons of minerals है, so as and when these minerals will be extracted, as mine ऐसे ही deplete होता जाएगा. However, when you have a building, we will say भाई building तो 40 साल तक चलेगा. We are not saying that starting में ज्यादा benefit मिलेगा, end में कम benefit मिलेगा. We will use straight line method. Certain assets which are technologically driven assets like softwares or let us say computers, we would say कि भाई whenever the technology is new, it gives us a higher level of benefit. When the technology becomes old, it will give us a lower level of benefit. So we can say WDV is better for us. So this is for people who are deciding the accounting method of depreciation. For certain assets, SLM is a good method. For certain WDV, for certain units of production, basically what decides the pattern in which you are expecting to receive benefits from the utilization of the assets. So like a building, you expect that uniform benefits मिलेंगे. SLM is a good method. For let us say computers, you can say कि हाँ जितना नया है उतना ज़्यादा utility आएगा उसका. Maybe written down value, higher depreciation in the earlier years. Mines, 10 tons का minerals है, हम जितना जब भी एक्सट्रैक्ट करेंगे उतना बेनिफिट मिलना, वो साल में बेनिफिट अपन ने यूटिलाइज किया, यूनिट्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन. आर वी गेटिंग दिस? सो यू शुड एमोर्टाइज इट ऑन अ सिस्टमैटिक बेसिस. अभी तकलीफ यही होएगा कि भाई अगर क्वेश्चन में दिया नहीं है कि सिस्टमैटिक बेसिस के, देन ऑन अ स्ट्रेट लाइन बेसिस. द स्टैंडर्ड इज वेरी क्लियर. इट सेज दैट इफ यू आर अनेबल टू डिटरमाइन इन प्रैक्टिस और फ्रॉम अ स्टूडेंट स्टैंड पॉइंट इन द एग्जाम क्वेश्चन, इफ यू आर अनेबल टू डिटरमाइन के हाउ इज द बेसिस, देन यू टेक द स्ट्रेट लाइन depreciation over the useful life. This is an asset with a finite life, so amortization will be on a systematic basis based on the pattern of benefits. The pattern of benefits, if given in the question, you will take that, like cash flows, production. If nothing given, if no systematic basis available, then on a straight line basis. Are we clear with this? Yes. Acha, you will depreciate it over how many years? Well, you will depreciate it typically over the finite life. However, if the finite life is not determinable, then a maximum period of 10 years. Over a finite life or 10 years, whichever is shorter. Sir, but if finite life is longer, वो हमने note 1 में explain किया है. 10-year limit unless proven otherwise. So unless you can prove otherwise, you will say assume that the maximum limit is 10 years. This is only for intangibles. And this is a very debatable clause. इंडेस में clause को निकाल दिया, but however अपने को पढ़ना है AS, पहले अपने को इंटर क्लियर करना है, फिर फाइनल में जाना है. So AS में ये clause है, so we will have to stick to that. AS 26 is a rebuttable. Rebuttable means you can rebut, refute it. You can say no, this is wrong. A rebuttable presumption that the useful life of an intangible asset cannot be greater than 10 years. Maximum can be 10 years. But this is rebuttable presumption. You can rebut it. Therefore, unless an entity can specifically prove with evidence that the life of an intangible asset is greater than 10 years, we will amortize the intangible asset over the finite life or 10 years, whichever is shorter. So we have mentioned in the note 1 the exception कि भाई अगर हमारा पेटेंट का लाइसेंस is 20 years, you can actually prove and say देखो भाई अब 20 years तक हमको बेनिफिट मिलने वाला है. In which case you can spread it over 20 years. However, if we don't have a basis to prove that the life is beyond 10 years, you will have to amortize it over the 10-year time frame or the finite life if it is shorter than 10 years. Are we clear with this 10-year clause? I think वो 10 year के clause ने आपको थोड़ा confusion में डाल दिया, but is it clear? Yes, okay. अच्छा, if there is an asset with an indefinite life, for example a trademark, if it has an indefinite life, then you will amortize it over the 10-year life if it is indefinite on a systematic basis if it is available. Typically there will be no systematic basis over here, in which case you will have to use the straight line basis over the 10 years. So if you have a pattern of benefits given, you will spread it in the ratio of that like production, cash flow or anything, and if it is not available, then on a straight line basis. So as a student, if nothing is given, you will spread it. यहाँ पे अपन ने लिखा है finite life or 10 years, whichever is shorter, because the heading over here is indefinite life, so there is no finite life, and hence here तो 10 year का time frame by default आ जाएगा. However, if it is a finite life, where your finite life is only 5 years, आपको लाइसेंस मिला है 5 साल के लिए, then थोड़ी ना 10 साल के ऊपर amortize करेंगे, then you will amortize it over 5 years. लाइसेंस मिला है आपको 15 साल के लिए, then you will amortize it over 15 years if you can prove that the life is longer than 10 years. However, you have no license, but आपको लग रहा है हाँ शायद 15 साल तक हम इसको utilize कर सकते हैं, we don't know. In which case, why you are unable to prove, then it is 10 years. Are we getting this? Chalo. Okay. Can there be a subsequent change in the useful life? Yes. It is possible that you thought that the useful life is let us say 5 years. The asset was worth 500 rupees. You thought that the useful life is 5 years, and you were doing SLM. First year में आपका 500 less 100, that is 400 हुआ. Second year में there is 500 less 100, that is 300 हुआ. Now there are 2 years have gone by. Ideally there are 3 more years remaining. However, you now believe that the remaining life at the start of year 3 is now 4 more years. You believe that the asset will run for 1 more year. Is it possible that there can be a change in accounting estimate? Yes, in which case, will you continue to depreciate it over the remaining 3 years only, or will you now depreciate it over the remaining 4 years? Over the 4 years. So we'll say, ठीक है यार, अच्छा, will you retrospectively change the depreciation already recorded in the past years? Will you retrospectively change the 100 recognized in year 1 and 2? No. However, in year 3, will your depreciation be 300 divided by 3, that is 100 rupees? No. You will change the depreciation in the future years. You will study this in a separate standard within advanced accounts of AS5, whereby you will call this as a change in accounting estimate. and a change in accounting estimate is always prospectively applied. You will not change the past. You will say, bhai, raat gayi, baat gayi, jo ho gaya, so ho gaya. In the past, you have recorded depreciation of 100 and 100, that is done. Now the carrying value is 300 and it is to be spread over the remaining 4 years, and hence the revised depreciation will now be 75 per annum. Are we clear with this? Is everyone clear? Yes, acha. In case the estimate of useful life subsequently changes, then we will prospectively means we will forget what has happened in the past, adjust the amortization for the future years, that is the remaining WDV. In our example, that is 300, to be amortized over the remaining useful life, that is in our example 4 years. Is everyone clear? Yes, acha. The last point is a little cruel on you. This is something which is not there in your inter-CA syllabus at all. There is something called as a recoverable value. This is covered by a separate accounting standard called as AS28, accounting standard 28, which is on impairment of assets. AS28 is not applicable in inter-CA, it will come directly in final CA. However, in certain revisionary test papers or RTP questions, Institute has just thrown the word recoverable value, which makes it very complicated for the students, and hence we are trying to cover this. Are we getting this? ये चीज आपके syllabus में है नहीं. AS28 is not there in your syllabus. However, the calculation of recoverable value and its application has been tested in a few revisionary test papers, RTPs. It's not there in your study material, but it has been tested in the Institute's version. Institute कभी कभार ऐसा गूगली कर देता है. तो हमारा काम है कर्म करो, फल की अपेक्षा मत करो. तो कर्म करना है अपने को, ये थोड़ा बहुत सीखना पड़ेगा. Are we getting this? Are you yes or no? Okay. So over here, the problem arises that intangible assets are recognized at cost, less accumulated amortization. So intangible assets are recognized at cost. Let us say this is 500, less amortization. Let us say in the first year amortization is 100 rupees, and as a result the written down value, इसको अपन legal language में also बोल सकते हैं carrying value. The carrying value, that is a value at which the asset is carried in the balance sheet, is 400. Are we getting this? At the end of year 1, the asset appears in your books of accounts at 400. Are you yes or no? Okay. Based on what you have studied till now, do you compare this carrying value with the fair market value of the intangible asset at the end of year 1? Based on what you have studied till now, do you compare the fair market value of the intangible asset with the carrying value with the fair market value? Excellent. No, you don't compare. The standard does not require you to compare it. Achha, let us say this is not an intangible asset. This is an inventory item. You are buying and selling. Let us say you are in the business of buying and selling cars. You have purchased a car at a cost of 100 rupees. At the end of the year, maybe apne AS2 foundation में भी पढ़ा रहेगा. At the end of the year, do you show it at 100 only, or do you compare it with what you call as net realizable value? Loosely speaking, the fair market value. Do we compare this? Yes or no? Yes. You compare this with the net realizable value, and the law says you will select whichever is lower. कुछ हल्का हल्का याद आ रहा है अपने को? Yes. अच्छा. Now, why is the accounting for inventory appropriate, whereby you compare it with the fair market value or NRV, and why is the accounting for intangible also appropriate, that you should not compare it with the fair market value? Why are both of them appropriate? It is because the objective with which you are holding the asset is different. The objective with which you are holding the inventory is for the purpose of sale in the ordinary course of business, and hence if the sale value of the inventory drops, there is a loss which should be recorded. Does this make sense? Yes, and hence it makes logical sense to compare cost or NRV and select whichever is lower based on the concept of prudence and conservatism. Recognize losses if you expect them, if the fair market value has fallen. Recognize gains as and when you actually earn them. However, Intangible asset. What is the objective of having a telecom license? If you have a telecom license, what is the objective of holding the telecom license? Is the objective of a telecom license to use the telecom license, or is the core objective to sell the telecom license? Use it, which means let the fair market value be 350 rupees or let the fair market value be 450 rupees. Does it matter? Does it matter? No, it does not matter. It does not matter. In fact, if I give you perspective, if I were to buy a car, जैसे आपने अपने दोस्त लोग का फोटो देखा रहेगा इंस्टाग्राम पे कि भाई गाड़ी खरीदा, ये इधर सेल्फी खींचा बड़े चाबी के साथ, थोड़ा आरती कर रहे हैं अपन, ये सब अपन ने फोटो देखे. द मोमेंट यू बाय अ कार, आपने गाड़ी का चाबी घुमाया, गाड़ी का वैल्यू फॉल्स 20%, इट बिकम्स अ सेकंड हैंड कार. द कार, इफ समवन वर टू बाय अ 10 लाख कार, यू विल नॉट, द मोमेंट आप घर से चला के उसको जाओ तो 2 लाख रुपए गाड़ी का वैल्यू गिर गया, बिकॉज इट बिकम्स अ सेकंड हैंड कार. बट हमको गाड़ी बेचना ही नहीं है यार. हाउ डज इट मैटर दैट द फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू इज 8 लाख रुपीज? We don't want to sell the car. Otherwise क्या होगा, you buy the car, the very next instant you have to show a write off कि भाई 2 लाख रुपए हमको write off करना पड़ेगा, गाड़ी का वैल्यू ड्रॉप हो गया. Does this make sense? Should you record a write off for 2 lakh rupees? No, you should not, because the intention is not to sell it, which means you will blindly recognize it at 400 or 500 as the case may be in your books of accounts. This is where a separate accounting standard AS28, which is out of your syllabus, has a problem. AS28 is on what you call as impairment of assets. What do you mean by impairment of assets? Impairment refers to the reduction in the earning capacity of the asset. Acha, do I have to check for impairment every year? No, you don't have to study this right now, but just for your knowledge, impairment is to be tested only if there is an indicator that the value is reducing. सर नहीं समझ में आ रहा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यू आर अ कंपनी विच मैन्युफैक्चर्स tobacco, which manufactures gutka, for example, and for that you have acquired a license for manufacturing tobacco or gutka. जैसे slaughtering भी आप करते हो तो उसका license होता है, tobacco गुटका manufacture करना license होता है, you have acquired that license. Now one fine day what happens is that the government changes and the new government now says that we are banning the sale of tobacco, we are banning the sale of gutka. Well, you have a license to manufacture gutka for 10 years, 3 years have gone by, 7 years are remaining, but now the government is saying that it is going to ban the manufacture of tobacco. Okay, in which case will the value of that license, I mean, you are not going to sell that license, but you are going to use that license, right? However, in the next 6 or 7 years, you will not be able to manufacture tobacco using that license because the government has banned it. So as the value of the license dropped, yes. However, in your books of accounts, AS26 tells you that you will recognize it at cost less accumulated depreciation or accumulated amortization, which means in your ledger, the license will appear at 400 rupees only. Hypothetically, let us assume 5 years was the life. Then the license will appear at 400 rupees only. However, are you overstating the asset in your books? Are you overstating the asset in your books? Is there a clearly imminent write-off for the asset? Yes. And as a result, AS28 states that in certain circumstances, which are beyond the scope of your syllabus, in certain circumstances, you will have to estimate what is called as a recoverable value. Recoverable value. Sir, what is a recoverable value? Recoverable value is not the fair market value. Fair market value is relevant for those assets which you intend to sell in the ordinary course of business. Intangibles, etc. You are not going to sell in the ordinary course of business. You are going to use it in the ordinary course of business. Okay. So recoverable value क्या होता है? Recoverable value is, listen to this carefully, it is the present value of the future cash inflows that are expected from utilizing this license. For example, just to give you a much more realistic example, if you are aware, there are certain states which have banned alcohol. The entire country has not, thankfully for you, but there are certain states which have banned alcohol. For example, Gujarat has, probably Bihar, Kerala, etc. So if I am manufacturing alcohol, like United Breweries or United Spirits, I'm manufacturing alcohol. If, think of it this way, if Goa bans alcohol, do you think suddenly my capability of generating cash flows will fall dramatically? You see how much consumption of alcohol happens in Goa. Are yes or no? In which case I would say कि भाई ठीक है, मेरे पास लाइसेंस तो है, पूरे कंट्री में बैन नहीं हुआ है, बट यार ये स्टेट में मेरा 30% of revenue was coming. Now if Goa is banning alcohol, तो यार क्या पता क्या होएगा? Is there a possibility that my license has reduced in value? I'm not going to sell my license. I'm going to use my license, but at lower than expected capacities. Are yes or no? And hence there are indicators of impairment. And if there are certain indicators of impairment, you will have to estimate a new term which is called as recoverable value. What do you mean by recoverable value? Recoverable value is the value that you can recover from using the asset. Let us say using the intangible asset, you are expecting in year 1, 2, 3, 4, you can generate 80 rupees, 80 rupees, 80 rupees and 80 rupees. Which means at max, even if you use this intangible asset, the telecom license, the alcohol license, the tobacco license maximum, from using the asset, I can generate future economic benefits worth 320 rupees. However, in my ledger, I am showing to the world that this asset is worth 400. Am I going to be able to recover 400 from the use of this asset? No. Which means, can I say that the asset is overstated? Yes, it is overstated to what extent? It is overstated to what extent? 80 rupees, which is fair. And hence, ideally, in case recoverable value is given to you in the question, from a student standpoint, you will loosely compare 400 with 320. Like you compare cost or NRV for inventory, you will compare the carrying value with the recoverable value. That is the value that you will get if you were to use the asset, and select whichever is lower and recognize an 80 rupees write-off. Does this make slight sense to you? Yes? Acha. If the value in use is 180, 180 and 180, let us say 180 into 4, for example, 720. Will you increase the value of the license to 720? No. Prudence and conservatism says, nahi bhai, you will select whichever is lower. Same is the case with inventory. Achha, yahan pe there is a mathematical flaw. Probably you must have studied or heard about the word time value of money. Have you heard that? Time value of money. That is 80 rupees in the first year is not equivalent to 80 rupees in the fourth year. 80 rupees today is not equivalent to 80 rupees after fourth year. Are yes or no? And hence what we are doing is we are comparing 400 rupees, which is a ledger balance today, with 80 rupees, which is expected to be received in year 1, year 2, year 3 and year 4. Are they at the same point of time? No. And as a result, what you will do is you will calculate something called as present value. You will do a lot of present value calculations the moment you do financial management. But if you have not done that, for the time being, don't delve too much into that. It will come as a natural feature to you. जैसे आपको 2 into 2 4 naturally आता है, वैसे आपको automatically आ जाएगा present value कैसे निकालने का. But if you have not done financial management, don't worry. There will be annuity factors which will be given to you. Annuity means a cash flow that is going to come in each year annually. इसको बोलते हैं annuity. Whereby you will be said that ideally अपन जैसे 80 into 4 करते हैं. 4 means year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. चारों साल को आपने equal weight दिया 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 का, जो गलत है. Year 1 and year 4 को equal weight नहीं जाना चाहिए. And as a result, 80 into 4, 320 is not the right answer. If I want to find the present value, an annuity factor will be given to you in the question. Let us assume it is given to you as 3.17. ये कैसे calculate होता है? I'm not going to go into that right now. It will create more confusion. In all the sums that have come, annuity factor has been given. It has come only 2 times and annuity factor has been given. You will understand that present value annuity factor once you do financial management. Okay, where we will say कि भाई ठीक है यार, maybe we will do a process called as discounting. Let us say the time value of money is 10%. Inflation, let us say, is 10%, for example, and let us say somehow you find the discounting factors as 0.91, 0.83. कैसे calculate होता है? I'm not going into that for the time being. Ignore that. And 0.68. So we are attributing different weights. जैसे बोलते हैं ना अपन weighted average. We are saying कि भाई 80 rupees after 1 year is equivalent to 80 into 0.91. That is 72.8 today. आपने present value सुना हुआ है क्या? 80 into 0.83, which is 66.4. 80 into 0.75, which is 60. And 80 into 0.68, which is 54.4. What does this mean? It means that if someone tells you that I'm going to pay you 80 rupees after 4 years, or I'm going to pay 54.4 today, it is one and the same. Or if someone says I'm going to pay you 80 rupees after 3 years, Instead of that, I'm going to pay you 60 rupees today. It is one and the same. So what we are trying to say is कि भाई ये सबका अगर total करे 72.8 plus 66.4 plus 60 plus 54.4, this comes to 253.6. Alternatively, what I can do is I can total all of these weights and say 0.91 plus 0.83 plus 0.75 plus 0.68 is 3.17. So if I do 80 into 3.17, you will get almost the same answer, 253.6. ये कोई जादू तो ना नहीं हो रहा है. अब फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट में कैपिटल बजटिंग करोगे, ये आपको नेचुरली आ जाएगा, उसमें कोई बड़ा बात नहीं है. So over here, what we are trying to say is, we are just trying to find the present value. Sir, why are we doing it? Concept आप समझ लो. Because 80 rupees in the fourth year is not equivalent to 80 rupees in the first year. And you are going to compare this number, the so-called 320 number, with the ledger balance today. 400 is the balance today, but 80 is the balance in the future. So you want to find the present value. You will say, I am capable of earning 10%. So if I'm going to get 80 rupees after 1 year, and someone says मैं एक साल बाद नहीं आपको आज पैसा देने को ready हूँ, I will be happy getting 72.8 because I can get 72.8 today, invest it for 1 year at the rate 10% and that will become 80 rupees, for example. So you're not doing a time value of money lecture, but this is how you can find the recoverable value. Basically, that is the present value of future cash flows. So do we have to take recoverable value in every question? No. Only if the data specifically tells you. बोलेगा आप भाई बेल मुझे मार, तभी अपने को करना है, अपने को भाई recoverable value करना पड़ेगा. Otherwise, we don't have to do this. It's a little unfair because Institute has not given you AS28 as a standard, but asked you 2 questions on that. But in case data on recoverable value is given, you will have to estimate the recoverable value, which is basically the annual cash flows into the discount factor. अगर आपको for the time being नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, just remember that annual cash flow into the discount factor given in the question, दोनों को multiply करो, whatever number you get, what that number means you should know. That number says how much is the benefit I can extract in today's terms from utilizing the asset. हाँ, so asset अंधाधुन मेरे को 400 पे recognize नहीं करना है. 400 मेरे को देखना है in certain circumstances. If there is a clear indicator कि भाई value has dropped, then you compare that 400 with the recoverable value and recognize the write-off or impairment as a case may be. I think we have gone overboard as well. अपने मस्त चिप्स खा रहे रह गए, अभी 8:30 हो गया, अपना डिनर टाइम हो गया. Yes बोल रहे. Okay, so over here, and we'll just read this last section and stop for the day. An intangible asset is held for use in the ordinary course of business. Therefore, an entity can generate cash inflows in the future years by using the intangible asset. Okay. Recoverable value refers, what does it mean? It is not the fair market value. Fair market value is the value that you will get if you sell the asset. Recoverable value refers to the present value of the future cash flows that are expected to be earned from using the intangible asset. In case the cash flows expected in each year remain constant, we can find the recoverable value as follows. You can just remember this for the time being for your calculation if you have not done financial management. Cash inflows per annum into the annuity factor. Annuity factor will be given to you in an accounts paper always. Annuity factor would be given in the question like 80 into 3.17. In such cases, intangible will appear at the lower of the cost, which is basically the ledger balance, which is 400 in the ledger in our books, and the recoverable value. So in our example, this was, let's say, 400 and 253.6. So we'll say कि भाई today's terms we are boboting to the world कि भाई 400 रुपए का asset है, but 400 तो हम recover कर ही नहीं पाएंगे. Future economic benefits, the maximum future economic benefits we can recover is 253.6, and hence the additional जो भी difference है 400 minus 253.6, 146.4 is the overstatement of the asset. You will remove that from the asset's value and expense it to the profit and loss account. Journal entry can be impairment loss account debit. So over here the journal entry can be impairment loss account debit, which will go to the profit and loss. To the intangible. Intangible जो आपके लेजर में 400 पे है, उसको अपन 146.4 से क्रेडिट करेंगे and P&L को डेबिट कर देंगे. In cases the recoverable value is lower than the cost, then the difference will be written off as an expense, which is impairment in the P&L, like we have done. The above adjustment should be done only if we have been given the information to calculate the recoverable value, that is the estimate of future cash flows as well as the annuity factor is given. The detailed provisions of impairment are covered under AS28, which is not a part of inter-CA syllabus. Okay, can we stop for the day? हाँ सर, ऐसा कोई पूछता है क्या? Yes, okay. So अच्छा, bye bye. आपने already bye बोल दिया. I get the message loud and clear. Thank you very much for your patience and your time. Please do revise the theory for ES26 that we have done today. We are done with the standard and we will do the sums in tomorrow's class. Okay, please do revise the theory. Have a good night and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye. Take care. The lecture schedule, I guess Ankush sir will update. For the time being, I think it will happen at least 6 days in a week. Saturday also it will happen, but he will update. Okay, chalo.